A breathtaking beauty with white hair fading to vibrant pink rests amidst a sea of blooming red roses, harboring a secret that could shatter kingdoms. A cruel voice mocks her unique, sparkling hair, comparing its reddish hue to the dark blood of evil spirits. But that mesmerizing gradient hair holds an otherworldly luster, glittering like a forbidden treasure. Despite the whispers of evil, someone praises Shanna, declaring her to be truly magnificent. The brutal reality is revealed as Shanna is chained to a stone wall, her stunning looks clashing with her captivity. A green-haired nobleman dramatically laments her beauty, calling her a witch while clutching his chest in theatrical despair. The green-haired man turns away, trying to keep his composure in the dim cell. He dramatically pledges his heart to her, claiming it will always belong to her despite her status as a witch. Extending his hand toward the chained white-haired girl, he offers her a way out. Smirking arrogantly, the green-haired noble demands that Shanna kiss his hand to earn her freedom. He whispers a sleazy proposition, offering to sneak her into his bedchamber under the cover of night. But Shanna is not a damsel in distress. She unleashes a brutal, lightning-fast high kick straight to his face. Even while chained, the white-haired heroine sends the noble flying backward with a shattering kick to the jaw. Deafening impact echoes through the stone dungeon walls as the arrogant lord is completely neutralized. Outside the iron gates, the panicked prison guards hear the loud commotion and rush down the hall. The guards scream in absolute terror as they discover the chaos unfolding in the cell. Shanna stands victoriously, brutally stomping on the face of the unconscious young master as the guards look on in horror. She fiercely yells at the stunned guards, immediately taking control of the entire room. Pressing her bare foot harder against the noble's face, she threatens to end his life if they dare take another step. The guards yell in furious outrage, calling her a vile witch but unable to move. Shanna's striking yellow eye narrows into an icy, terrifying glare that freezes the soldiers in their tracks. Completely intimidated by her fierce gaze, the guards back away, trembling with sudden fear. In another life, she was a modern-day athlete in Cairo, meticulously wrapping her hands for a brutal fight. Unleashing a massive, terrifying wave of bloodlust, the starving Shanna towers over her hostage like a true predator. Terrified by her aura, the guards flee to prepare a mountain of food and a horse just as she commanded. With the cell empty, Shanna praises herself for successfully buying some precious time. She desperately shakes the unconscious noble, demanding he hand over the keys to her chains. Grabbing the golden key from his hand, she commands him to toss it over as she snatches her freedom. Looking up at the barred window, she begins to reflect on how she ended up in this crazy situation. Just hours ago, she was a regular modern girl walking home in the dark when a mysterious voice called her name. Suddenly transported here, she screamed, fought off the guards, and realized this was definitely not a dream. With her execution by fire scheduled in just 1 hour, Shanna knows she has to escape the tower immediately. She desperately rattles the heavy iron bars of her cell windows, searching for any weakness. She curses the guards in frustration after realizing they managed to lock the main doors on their way out. Turning back to the unconscious green-haired man, she aggressively demands he wake up and give her the key. She furiously fumbles through his clothes, only to realize the useless jerk doesn't even have the cell door key. Panic sets in as she runs around the cell, frantically searching and banging on the stone walls for a way out. Light pours through the high barred window, highlighting her only path to survival. Thinking fast, she grabs the unconscious noble by the legs and drags him across the cold floor. Inspecting the window, she notices the bronze bars are old and worn, realizing she can break them with a lever. Shanna rolls up her elegant dress skirt to get to work, preparing to execute a daring escape plan. Finding a metal rod left behind by the guards, she cheerfully prepares to use a trick she saw in her favorite manhwas. She wraps a cloth around the iron bar in the window frame, preparing to twist and leverage the metal. The massive surge of strength, the old bronze bars snap completely apart. Shanna's eyes light up with pure golden excitement as her path to freedom finally opens. The sheer height of the massive stone castle tower looms above, marking a dangerous drop to the ground. Facing the deadly drop, she steels her resolve, knowing this leap is her only chance at survival. Looking down at the lush green treetops below, she prepares to jump, hoping the branches will break her fall. She hurls herself out of the high window, plummeting headfirst toward the forest in a desperate leap of faith. Gravity does the rest as she lands with a massive thud, planting her bare foot directly on the face of a bewildered, dark-haired military commander. Trapped in a web of royalty and dangerous secrets, a golden-eyed beauty holds the key to a kingdom's destiny. Her desperate escape takes a terrifying turn as she plummets headfirst from the castle tower. Gravity delivers a brutal surprise as her bare foot plants squarely on the face of an elite commander. A dizzying blur of movement spins her out of control as she crashes past the mounted riders. She hits the forest floor with a heavy impact, struggling to regain her footing in the grass. The dark-haired commander is left utterly stunned atop his white stallion by the sudden assault from above. Panic erupts as the royal guards furiously demand the immediate capture of the fleeing intruder. Shock sets in as the girl realizes she just kicked the most powerful man in the empire. Knowing her life is on the line, she resolves to vanish into the deep forest. The heavy gallop of the royal stallion thunders down the dirt path in hot pursuit. She spins desperately through the trees as the sound of closing hooves echoes right behind her. In one swift, effortless motion, the dark-haired commander captures the fleeing girl on horseback. Pressed against his chest, her heart races in a sudden surge of adrenaline and fear. The arrogant commander smirks, demanding she confess to whatever crime brought her to his prison. The scene shifts to a bustling, sunlit castle town oblivious to the unfolding drama. An angry, faceless mob gathers in the square, screaming bloodthirsty demands for her execution. Bound to a wooden stake, the white-haired heroine fiercely mocks the crowd's supreme ignorance. The unforgiving townspeople drown out her defense, chanting relentlessly for her to be burned as a witch. Watching the spectacle from his elevated golden throne, the dark-haired prince coolly validates her logical argument. Resting his chin on his gloved hand, the prince watches the chaotic trial with absolute boredom. The green-haired nobleman steps forward to confidently testify that he saw her performing witchcraft. A flashback reveals the white-haired girl standing alone amidst towering ancient runestones under the night sky. She raises her hands toward the stars, appearing to draw cosmic energy from the glowing heavens. In a comical mental outburst, the transmigrated heroine furiously denies the nobleman's ridiculous claims. The green-haired noble smugly boasts that he has additional witnesses to prove his accusations. Two commoners step forward, eagerly describing how she absorbed the mystical glowing red moonlight. The dark-haired prince narrows his cold blue eyes, absorbing every detail of the witness testimony. Desperate and cornered, she mentally screams that she only arrived in this bizarre world 3 days ago. A striking contrast reveals her dual identity as a modern high schooler and the accused fantasy witch. The prince remains silent, his expression unreadable as he deliberates her fate. She gasps in sudden terror as she realizes her defense is completely falling on deaf ears. Turning his back, the prince decrees that she will be executed for treason regardless of her witch status. The ridiculous logic of the empire's justice system leaves her utterly dumbfounded. Driven to absolute fury, she screams a curse, wishing for him to be struck by lightning. In a terrifying display of divine timing, a blinding bolt of purple lightning cracks down right behind him. Turns out her curse has excellent customer service. A deafening explosion obliterates the ground, sending shockwaves through the entire town square. The bound heroine looks on in absolute shock and delight as her accidental curse actually manifests. The clear sky suddenly turns dark as heavy storm clouds unleash a torrential downpour over the panicked crowd. Drenched and bewildered, the prince and the green-haired nobleman stand frozen in the pouring rain. Water streams down her white hair as she hangs her head, quietly processing the sudden chaos. Rain-soaked and defeated, the soldiers look on as the trial is completely washed out. Looking up into the storm, the drenched prince suddenly bursts into a chilling, maniacal laugh. His eye glows with a dangerous, obsessive blue light as he turns his gaze back to her. She shivers in pure terror, realizing her lightning stunt just made her the target of a dangerous predator. The heavy rain casts a gray shroud over the medieval towers, signaling a dark turn in her captivity. Under the cover of the stormy downpour, the royal caravan departs into the deep forest. Mud splatters as the horses' hooves march steadily along the rain-slicked road. Forced to walk barefoot in the freezing mud, her tattered dress drags behind her. In a sudden flashback, she recalls her brief moment of power, wielding a giant sword to demand a negotiation. Cold reality shatters her memories as a sharp metallic blade is pressed directly against her neck. Facing certain death, Shanna looks up as the cold, blue-eyed prince demands her final words. Her mind drifts, frantically wishing she had the magical power of a true witch to escape this nightmare. Held captive in chains, Shanna refuses to let this cruel fantasy world break her spirit. As she is dragged through the forest, Shauna begs her captors to wait. In a sudden, desperate struggle, she yanks her bound wrists away from her guards. To survive, she knows she must play the part of a mysterious, all-knowing witch. Escaping into the lush sunlit woods, she searches for any advantage near a rushing stream. Looking down at her tattered but elegant dress, she realizes it is far too impractical for running. Stepping into the cool river, she resolves to shed her heavy garments to evade capture. She hilariously imagines herself as nobility, refusing to accept a fate lower than a baroness. Admiring her delicate, unblemished hands, she is determined to preserve her beauty at all costs. Suddenly, the furious yells of her guards shatter her brief moment of vanity. Her golden eyes narrow into a sharp, calculating glare as she prepares her next move. She confronts the guards, leaving them completely flustered and red-faced in her presence. Looking at the prince's finely embroidered spare boots, she spots the perfect disguise. Shauna struggles to fit into the prince's massive shirt and oversized leather boots. Demanding a pair of pants, she leaves the blushing guards completely paralyzed with embarrassment. Without any trousers, she simply tightens a makeshift belt around the oversized white shirt. She tries to convince herself that practical survival is far more important than high fashion. A sudden panic shout echoes through the forest canopy as the guards realize she has vanished. The guards rush to the riverbank, terrified that she was swept away by the current. Her tattered pink and white dress floats empty down the stream, serving as the perfect decoy. Hidden in the dense foliage, the disguised Shanna watches as the guards search the wrong area. Moving like a seasoned predator, she quietly grabs a sturdy tree branch above. A lone guard searches beneath her tree, completely oblivious to the danger lurking above his head. Shanna spots the guard's glaring bald spot and locks onto her target. With a brutal falling stomp, her heavy boot connects directly with the guard's head. The soldier hits the forest floor with a violent crash, instantly neutralized. Stepping victoriously onto her fallen foe, she claims his sword and demands a negotiation. In a flash of steel, another blade cuts through the air with terrifying speed. Shanna gasps in pure shock as a razor-sharp sword stops inches from her neck. The prince looms over her, coldly asking if she has any last words this time. Cornered on the forest floor, she stares down the tip of the prince's weapon. Defiant to the end, Shanna swings her sword only for it to be met with a deafening clash. With a single effortless sweep, the prince easily deflects her desperate strike. The sheer force of his counterattack leaves her hand trembling and her wrist nearly shattered. As his heavy footsteps approach, Shanna is forced to accept his overwhelming combat strength. Clinging to her weapon, she bitterly admits she is absolutely no match for him. Closing her eyes tightly, she braces herself for the end, convinced she is doomed. Before she can process her defeat, she is suddenly lifted off the ground. The cold prince scoops her up in a sudden, surprisingly gentle princess carry. She looks up, met only by his icy, unreadable blue-eyed stare. Bewildered by the sudden turn of events, she wonders what his true intentions are. Placed securely on his stallion, she is forced to ride alongside her silent captor. Shanna musters her courage, demanding to know where he plans to take her. Getting no response, she can only pout in absolute frustration at his stubborn silence. The prince remains utterly unfazed, his piercing gaze focused entirely on the road ahead. Recognizing her temporary defeat, Shanna decides that staying in the palace jail is her safest bet for now. Shifting back to their journey, the dense forest canopy frames their return to civilization. The rhythmic gallop of the stallion thunders down the path as they ride toward her uncertain future. Just when survival seemed guaranteed, the silent prince stares down his captive. Their gazes lock in a tense, breathless moment of silent confrontation. Pointing his white-gloved hand forward, the prince coldly labels her a witch. Shanna turns in surprise as the prince suddenly grabs her hand. Shanna pleads for him to let her go, but the prince refuses to fall for her tricks. A playful prompt questions why the prince wants his captive to hold on tight. Shanna is left utterly speechless, her golden eyes wide with pure disbelief. As Shanna questions his words, the prince calls to Little Eye as an arrow flies by. Panic surges through Shanna as the cold reality of danger sinks in. The prince warns that they are under ambush and orders everyone to hide immediately. A deadly crossbow glimmers in the shadows, locked onto its next target. Dodging a barrage of arrows, the guards scream in sheer terror. The prince demands to know what is happening while Shanna fears for her life. Metal clashes as a hooded assassin attacks the guards with a fierce scream. A mysterious dark orb rolls silently across the grassy forest floor. The strange orb suddenly bursts, unleashing a thick cloud of obscuring gas. Choking on the thick smoke, the prince struggles to open his eyes. The prince raises his head, spotting a brilliant blue light through the smoke. With a swift magical sweep, the sword cuts through the blinding energy. The bewildered guards look around in confusion, realizing their targets have escaped. Frantic warning echoes through the sky, urging the prince to be careful. Enormous boulders come crashing down, threatening to crush the prince and Shanna. A deafening crash reverberates through the forest as the mountain collapses. Amidst the booming explosions, a worried voice asks if His Majesty is all right. Dazed and disheveled, the prince slowly recovers his senses amidst the rubble. Shanna stares up in shock, her golden eyes wide with sudden realization. The prince insists he is fine, but Shanna furiously yells at him to get off. The turbulent skies slowly clear, marking a brief moment of quiet reprieve. A massive wall of fallen boulders completely seals them off from the guards. The guards despair over being blocked while the horse neighs in distress. The prince grows frustrated, realizing even his horse is trapped on the other side. Shanna analyzes the rubble, noting it formed an intentional protective barrier. She wonders if this incredible magical feat was caused by that mysterious spear. The terrifying realization sets in that she is far away from Earth. She has transmigrated into a dangerous fantasy world that truly possesses magic. The prince decides they will head to Duke Castilla's place first, confusing Shanna. When Shanna questions the name Castilla, the prince firmly confirms their destination. Shanna is caught off guard as the prince suddenly grabs her hand. Shanna demands to know why he is pulling her, but he simply replies he lacks rope. Tightening his grip, the prince coldly asks how he could possibly trust her. Walking along the path, Shanna wonders if she should reveal her true identity. Their steady footsteps rustle quietly through the fallen leaves of the forest. The prince announces that they have finally arrived at the duke's house. Shanna looks at him suspiciously, wondering if he has finished speaking. Shanna's golden eyes narrow with intense suspicion and rising determination. She notices his hand trembling slightly, his tight grip beginning to falter. A sudden painful cough breaks the silence. Shanna gasps in pure shock as she realizes what is happening. The prince suddenly collapses against a tree, completely exhausted and weakened. Sweating profusely, the prince pants heavily as his strength completely fades away. A deep poison cut on the prince's arm threatens his survival as the venom spreads. Leaning weakly against the tree, his strength completely deserts him as the poison takes hold. The sudden collapse of her captor forces Shanna to act immediately to save him. Meanwhile, at Sir Bale's grand residence, shocking news of the crown prince throws everyone into a frenzy. The green-haired nobleman is stunned and outraged to learn his rival is still alive. Panic grips him as he realizes his entire scheme is in jeopardy. He recalls a solemn vow made to his father to eliminate the prince. Frustrated, he stares at the reports of his target's narrow escape. Throwing a violent fit of rage, he is furious that Shanna escaped alongside him. He slumps over his desk, thoroughly defeated by this sudden and unexpected setback. The butler tries to console him, but the nobleman can only scream Shanna's name in despair. He trembles with pure anger at the thought of Shanna being with the prince. The elder butler is left completely speechless by his master's dramatic outburst. Composing himself, the butler offers a respectful nod of agreement to his master. In a sudden flashback, the nobleman bitterly regrets not burning her at the stake right away. He foolishly believes she would have accepted his marriage proposal if he had saved her then. Fueled by delusion and obsession, he demands her immediate capture in return. Yelling at his servants, the green-haired nobleman demands she be brought directly before him. The scene shifts back to the serene sunset over the quiet forest canopy. A mysterious green leaf drops quietly onto the soft forest floor, signaling a shift in the wind. Shanna wipes her face, bracing herself to treat the wounded prince before time runs out. The prince remains slumped against a tree, his bandaged arm still bleedy. She carefully selects wild herbs, hoping they can neutralize the deadly poison in his veins. She prepares to put her grandfather's long-lost medical skills to the test. Shanna smiles confidently as she recalls her training from 10 years ago. Touching her soft cheek, she takes a brief moment to focus her mind. With a sharp slap to her own cheeks, she psychs herself up for the task. Diggling softly, she prepares to gather food and medicine for their survival. A plumpfish leaps dramatically out of the rushing herder. Using her captured sword, she triumphantly catches 3 fresh fish from the river. She gathers a sparkling feast of wild apples, fish, and forest delicacies. Taking a big bite, she inspects a crisp red forest fruit that resembles an apple. He eagerly devours the delicious apples in a comedic feeding frenzy. Hey, survival is hard work, don't judge her appetite. A pile of empty apple cores reveals her massive, insatiable hunger. Cheerfully declaring it the best apple ever, she finishes her meal with a bright smile. Gently placing her hand on his forehead, she checks the unconscious prince's fever. Relieved, she feels his burning temperature finally begin to drop. Though his fever is broken, she knows he still needs crucial rest to recover fully. With night falling over the forest, she resolves to set up camp in the wild. The eerie silence of the night is shattered by a wolf sow. A majestic white wolf stands atop a cliff, howling at the starry sky. Suddenly, the rustling of leaves nearby alerts her to an approaching presence. Quick, silent paws sprint through the dark forest brush toward him. The mysterious white wolf races with incredible speed through the shadows. A vibrant celebration of their magical journey captures their destiny under the moonlight. A sudden magical burst of light and sparkles illuminates the dark night. Shanna's golden eyes widen in shock as magical energy envelopes her surroundings. Suddenly, a blazing forest fire erupts behind her, lighting up the sky. Clutching 2 broken sticks, Shanna looks on in absolute disbelief at the sudden blaze. Mistaking the roaring fire for a divine miracle, she enthusiastically praises heaven for the warmth. Just as survival seems secured, Shanna realizes she is about to be consumed by her own sudden magical blaze. Confused, she notices the roaring flames are inexplicably starting to die down on their own. A sudden, terrifying scream nearby breaks the silence, making her freeze in absolute panic. A monstrous white wolf growls viciously as terrified guards panic over the endless swarm of beasts. The pursuing guards assume the beasts are protecting the witch and vow to locate her. Furious at being called a witch, Shanna screams at her pursuers to shut their mouths. Flashbacks trigger memories of a young noblewoman's life hanging in the balance, desperately needed to save her master. The beautiful, high-born captive was bound in heavy chains amidst a bed of blooming roses. Shanna stands in stunned silence as the glowing embers swirl all around her. White Wolf bared its razor-sharp teeth with a low, menacing growl. With a sudden burst of speed, the majestic beast lunges forward to attack. High above, under the crescent moon, a painful scream echoes as someone gets bitten. The sky slowly transitions into soft shades of pink and purple as dawn approaches. Shadow watches in amusement as the wolf hilariously chases the bruised guards away, securing an easy victory. With the enemies scattered, the mysterious wolf watches silently from the glowing bushes, its eyes shining with dual colors. Breathing a sigh of relief, Shanna walks away from the scene of the chaos. Stepping onto the lush grass, she notices the fire has completely vanished. Shanna marvels at the pristine forest, completely untouched by the fire as if by magic. Exhaustion finally catches up to her as she lets out a wide, tired yawn. Shanna recalls the grueling night she spent nursing the poisoned prince back to health. Slumping against a tree, her heavy eyelids finally flutter shut as sleep takes over. Her consciousness fades away into a peaceful, bright white void. As morning breaks, a small bird chirps merrily in a sunlit branch. The bird spreads its wings and flies off into the bright forest canopy. Under the gentle morning light, Shanna sleeps peacefully beside her resting companion. The dark-haired prince slowly opens his pale blue eyes, staring in silent wonder. Deep in her sleep, Shanna's body begins to tilt sideways. With a soft thud, she slides down and rests her head directly on his lap. Nearby, the magical healing herbs glow softly in the bright morning grass. Looking down at a sleeping caregiver, the prince quietly acknowledges her as a savior. A rare, gentle smile graces the prince's lips as he watches over her. A soft morning breeze sweeps through the forest, rustling her long pink hair. Sparkles of light dance in the air as her mind drifts deeper into a dream. Deep within her dreamscape, Shanna calls out for her mother in the darkness. Her mother appears in a professional suit, warmly teasing her for standing around foolishly. Her father, little brother, and grandfather wave happily, greeting her with bright smiles. Memories of delicious, freshly baked bread fill her dreaming mind. Panic sets in as her beloved family begins to walk away from her. Shanna desperately cries out, pleading to go along with them. A sudden blinding flash of light shatters her peaceful dream mode. Shanna's golden eyes snap wide open in sheer shock and disorientation. Waking up panting, she finds herself lying in a massive, luxurious bed. But staring at the ceiling, she realizes her peaceful life was just a fleeting dream. She gazes around the incredibly lavish room, decorated in elegant shades of pink and purple. Sitting up slowly, Shanna tries to make sense of her new opulent surroundings. Outside, a magnificent white mansion stands proudly amidst a sea of blooming red roses. Shanna remains completely baffled, knowing she was just sleeping in the dirty forest. Surrounded by pure luxury, she desperately wonders how she ended up in this bed. Looking up at the glittering chandelier, she wonders if she was carried into the palace while asleep. Stepping out of bed, her bare feet touch the floor as she prepares to investigate. Falling flat on her face with a heavy thump, Shanna groans in agony as her sudden thrust into this lavish reality begins with a painful crash landing. Memories of her past life flicker softly, reminding her of the family she left behind in another world. Shaking her head frantically, Shanna decides to put her sentimental thoughts aside to focus on the immediate mystery at hand. Steel-willed determination takes over as she commands herself to stop grieving and start acting. Her sharp golden eyes narrow as she resolves to figure out exactly where she has been taken. A sudden loud crash echoes through the room as a metal basin filled with water clatters violently onto the floor. A young maid stares in absolute shock, her eyes filling with tears of joy as she gasps in disbelief. Sobbing hysterically, the maid throws her arms around Shanna, squeezing her in a desperate embrace. The maid wails with relief while Shanna can only sweat drop at her maid's overly dramatic outburst. Gushing with happiness, the maid shakes her by the shoulders while Shanna remains utterly bewildered by her intense affection. The maid playfully scolds Shanna about her picky eating habits, reminding her not to pick out vegetables. Completely disconnected from these unfamiliar memories, Shanna wonders who this maid is even talking about. A luxurious steaming breakfast is laid out, enticing Shanna with the rich scent of fresh pastries and tea. Sweet maid happily confirms her orders, radiating pure joyful energy. Introducing herself as Marianne, she enthusiastically flexes her bicep to show she is ready to protect her lady. This grand sanctuary is Castilla, a magnificent estate hidden behind a sea of blooming red roses. A dark mystery unfolds as the narration reveals Shanna vanished into thin air from the courtyard 4 nights ago. Sipping her hot tea, Shanna listens intently as she tries to piece together her mysterious disappearance. Realizing she is indeed a noble, Shanna decides to fake amnesia to navigate this bizarre and dangerous situation. Chewing on a delicious croissant, she mentally weighs her options on how to explain her sudden absence. Putting her teacup down with a sharp clack, she prepares to deliver her manufactured story. Suddenly, Marianne gasps aloud in sheer disbelief as Shanna reveals her supposed memory loss. The maid's face drains of color as she struggles to process the terrible news about her lady's mind. Marianne mentions the crown prince intimately carrying her home, prompting Shanna to spit her tea out in absolute shock. As Shanna coughs violently, Marianne panics and desperately tries to help her regain her breath. Recovering from the shock, Shanna cannot believe that the ruthless prince was the one who brought her back. Marianne enthusiastically confirms that the crown prince himself carried her back to the safety of the estate. In a dreamy memory, the dark-haired prince gently cradled the sleeping Shanna in his arms amidst a sea of roses. Marianne swoons as she describes just how handsome and caring the prince looked during the rescue. While Marianne sees a fairy tale romance, Shanna is absolutely disgusted by the forced narrative. Marianne admits her own heart was racing with excitement just watching the dramatic, heroic moment unfold. The mere thought of romance with her former captor makes Shanna physically sick with disgust. Shuddering, Shanna nervously asks what else happened after the prince brought her to her room. Marianne explains that the prince seemed surprised by Shanna's name and promised to send an envoy before departing. Shanna ponders the prince's reaction, wondering what his true motives are for helping her. Despite the looming political storm, Shanna celebrates finally escaping her dark, damp prison cell. Vigorously smacking a wooden doll representing her captor, Shanna vents her lingering fury over her imprisonment. Marianne bows respectfully and scrapes her chair back, preparing to leave her lady to rest. Offering a gentle farewell, Marianne wishes her mistress a peaceful rest as she exits. The heavy double door slams shut, leaving Shanna alone in her luxurious chambers at last. Flopping onto the incredibly soft mattress, Shanna sighs happily, thrilled to finally breathe easy. Staring up at the glittering ceiling, she admits to herself that her life has become a complete, chaotic mess. Shanna smiles blissfully, content to enjoy this rare moment of peace and luxury. Forgetting all her past complaints, she rolls around happily on the incredibly soft, cloud-like sheets. Looking out the window, Shanna resolves to stay put for now while she schemes a way back home. Smiling with renewed hope, Shanna declares she has a very good feeling about her new situation. Outside her door, the servants whisper in dread, terrified of what the awakened lady's return will bring. Staring at a cold portrait of Shanna, the staff laments that the mansion will soon be filled with screams once more. The narration reveals that the Earl took Shanna in and raised her as his very own daughter. Marianne gingerly steps forward to peer behind a heavy curtain, completely unprepared for what she is about to discover. A mysterious portrait of the red-haired Earl Grad Castilla hints at the grand secrets of this estate. Glistening water dances in the sunlight as a grand stone fountain sparkles in the courtyard. Looking around in complete bewilderment, Shanna struggles to comprehend her bizarre new reality. Peering through the large window, Shanna contemplates exploring the massive mansion to find clues. She resolves to play along with her current identity despite her sudden memory loss. Shanna realizes she must quickly learn this family's rules and relationships to survive. Shanna shakes her head frantically, realizing that an easy escape is entirely impossible. A sudden, sharp click echoes as the heavy bedroom doors begin to open. A young blonde gardener carrying a flower pot spots Shanna and freezes in pure shock. Blushing furiously, the gardener quickly turns away and frantically claims he saw absolutely nothing. Shanna realizes she is still in her nightgown just as Marianne begins furiously yelling. The angry maid scolds the gardener for failing to place the flower pot before morning. Terribly frightened, the young blonde gardener prostrates himself on the floor, begging for mercy. The heavy double doors swing shut, leaving the crying servant groveling in the hallway. Sweat dropping, Shanna is completely stunned by Marianne's incredibly fierce and intimidating attitude. The harsh reality of the strict mansion hierarchy begins to settle heavily on Shanna. Sitting alone, Shanna resolves to prevent innocent servants from being unjustly scolded on her account. A polite knock on the door suddenly interrupts her thoughts. A maid outside announces she has arrived with a fresh change of clothes. An incredibly lavish red dress decorated with dark bows is brought into the room. Shanna is utterly baffled that such an extravagant gown is considered regular daily wear. Clutching her stomach, Shanna winces in pain as the corset is pulled incredibly tight. She marvels at how unbelievably thin her new host body's waist actually is. The nervous maid trembles with anxiety while carefully fastening the dress's rose-themed sleeves. Marianne enters the dressing room, offering another outfit option for her lady. Marianne presents a glittering green dress that is currently the height of local fashion. Shanna instantly dismisses the flashy green outfit, showing zero interest in the trend. They both agree that the dress style is far too outdated and poorly designed. Marianne happily agrees, pointing out that the center jewel looks incredibly awkward and funny. Walking down the hallway, Marianne cheerfully gossips about the messy fashion trends of other nobles. Passing servants bow deeply and respectfully, standing completely still as Shanna walks by. Shanna internally notes that the terrified servants behave more like wooden puppets than real people. Marianne continues her guided tour, pointing out the mansion's study and the tea room. Shanna pauses in awe, admiring a beautiful glowing crystal statue of an angel. Tucked behind deep red curtains, a large, majestic portrait of a young woman catches her eye. Shanna gasps as she finds herself staring directly at a stunning portrait of her former self. Marianne explains that the painting was made to celebrate her 18th birthday the previous year. Shanna realizes with a shock that this body is younger than her actual age of 22. Shanna quickly covers up her slip of the tongue, assuring Marianne she was only muttering. She quietly admires the dignified and mature aura of her host body's original self. Shanna praises her own quick thinking, grateful she claimed to have amnesia to survive. Marianne looks at her with a gentle, deeply observant expression. Marianne sadly accepts that her beloved lady has truly forgotten everything about her past. She points out that Shanna looked at her own portrait as if staring at a stranger. Shanna panics internally, shocked by Marianne's incredibly sharp and intuitive observation skills. Marianne laughs off the awkward tension, trying to keep the mood light and cheerful. Marianne warmly invites Shanna to follow her as they continue exploring the massive estate. She tenderly promises Shanna that she will help her remember everything since she knows her best. Marianne recalls the tragic disaster from a decade ago that left Shanna a lonely orphan. She explains that the red-haired Earl Grad Castilla adopted her, acting as her guardian and father. Thrust into a world of hidden danger, a girl with white hair and shimmering gold eyes must decode a treacherous past to survive. A stunning portrait of Count Grad Castilla reveals a serious man with striking red hair and intense golden eyes. Looking down at the painting, Shanna finds herself captivated by the Count's handsome features, quietly marveling at his appearance. Though known for his quiet and cold demeanor, the portrait hints at a deeper, unspoken warmth beneath his stern expression. This silent affection is proved by the lush courtyard, which she completely covered in her favorite red roses. A steaming cup of tea is poured, adding a sense of elegance and comfort to the mysterious mansion. Deeply touched by his secret kindness, Shanna realizes her adoptive father is a truly wonderful person. Curious about her silent guardian, Shanna wonders about his current whereabouts and if he has left the estate. Under the Emperor's direct command, the Count was deployed to the southern border to defend the Empire against their enemies. The brown-haired maid happily shares the news that the war has finally ended, meaning his return is imminent. Panic strikes Shanna as she realizes her sudden amnesia will be impossible to hide from her doting uncle. Desperate to secure an ally, Shanna grabs Anne and pleads for her absolute assistance in the days ahead. She begs her loyal maid to keep her secret safe and help her navigate the mansion's strict rules. Shanna flashes a brilliant, radiant smile, trying to win over her maid's complete loyalty. She tilts her head with a sweet, innocent expression, waiting anxiously for the maid's response. Standing close on the red-carpeted floor, Shanna places a reassuring hand on her maid's shoulder. Gaining confidence, the brown-haired maid smiles warmly, fully prepared to help her beloved mistress. Outside, a bright blue sky with passing white clouds marks the beginning of their secret partnership. The maid suggests they begin with Shanna's favorite activities to help trigger her forgotten memories. Slumped over the sofa with a heavy book balanced on her head, Shanna struggles with a massive headache from reading. The ancient text looks completely incomprehensible to Shanna, resembling nothing but curvy earthworms on the pages. The brown-haired maid taps her chin thoughtfully, brainstorming another activity that might spark her memory. A wooden treasure chest overflows with sparkling brilliant gemstones of various colors. Shanna's eyes light up with pure ecstasy at the sight of the dazzling precious gems. The maid explains that Shanna, being weak since birth, loved taking short walks in the garden gazebo holding a gem. Inspecting a brilliant red gemstone in the sunlight, Shanna questions why she only walked with them at night. The maid explains that Shanna believed the gems looked far more beautiful under the light of the moon. A sudden flashback reveals a green-haired man testifying that he witnessed Shanna performing a bizarre ritual. He claimed to have seen Shanna alone at the ruined moon god's sacrificial altar, absorbing the moonlight. Staring in shock, Shanna realizes the man's claims about her being a witch might actually be true. Shanna wonders in dread if her loyal maid is also aware of her secret identity as a witch. The peaceful garden stands quiet as the afternoon sun begins to set over the red rose bushes. Caring for her lady, the maid offers to fetch a warm coat and hot tea as the air grows cold. Anne looks at Shanna with sweet, unsuspecting eyes, completely unaware of her mistress's internal panic. Shanna's mind is plagued by terrifying visions of an angry, pitchfork-wielding mob coming to execute her. Desperate to avoid suspicion, Shanna tells her maid that nothing is wrong and suggests heading back inside. Two walk down the path lined with red roses, the sound of their footsteps echoing softly. Suddenly, Shanna freezes in her tracks, prompting her concerned maid to ask what is wrong. Shanna points out a single pristine white rose blooming amidst the sea of red flowers. The maid bites her hand in pure panic, terrified that a gardener named Sean has made a grave mistake. The maid bows deeply in terror, frantically apologizing and promising to have the white rose replaced with a red one immediately. Trying to smooth things over, the maid nervously promises that a delicious, perfect dinner is waiting for them. Shanna is left completely baffled by the maid's intense panic over a simple rose color. A grand roasted turkey sits at the center of a lavish dining table, surrounded by fine delicacies. The sight of the incredibly luxurious meal leaves Shanna completely stunned by the sheer nobility class wealth. Taking a bite, Shanna's eyes sparkle with pure delight at the incredibly delicious taste. The plates are quickly picked clean, leaving only empty dishes after a satisfying feast. Shanna elegantly dabs her lips with a cloth, thoroughly satisfied with her spectacular meal. Meanwhile, the maid clenches her hands in anticipation, determined to serve her mistress perfectly. Under a starry night sky, a quiet resolve echoes, but with a witch's secret to hide and the count returning, how long can the charade last? Under a glowing crescent moon, the quiet estate gazebo stands draped in beautiful red roses. A cloaked figure walks down a stone path, hidden in the shadows of the garden. The brown-haired maid fiercely grips her whip as she prepares to enforce the mansion's brutal rules. With a cold glare, the maid readies her glowing lash to punish the mansion's staff. The whip slashes through the air, leaving a glowing white trail of absolute terror. Shanna recalls a legendary vision of herself as a powerful, divine white-haired goddess. Standing before the dark mansion, Shanna realizes something is deeply unsettling about this place. Examining a brilliant red gem under the moonlight, she suspects her host's past holds dark secrets. In a sudden memories flash, Shanna enthusiastically attempts to awaken new magic using the gemstone. A sudden shocking noise startles her, breaking her out of her magical trance. Wide-eyed with fear, Shanna wonders if her restless ghost is lurking nearby. Trapped in her own panic, she collapses onto the path surrounded by red roses. Nearby in the dark forest, the blonde gardener pants in agony, covered in fresh whip scars. The cloaked maid demands the trembling servants move out of her way. The blonde gardener begs for mercy, but the ruthless maid refuses to stop his brutal punishment. Enraged by a poorly prepared dinner, the maid decides the cook must suffer 20 more lashes. Another terrified maid grovels on the dirt, scolded for failing to clean Shanna's portrait frame. The gardener tries to intervene, but the cruel maid commands him to worry about himself. A brief memory shows the young gardener panicking over a single white rose among the red ones. Screaming with rage, the maid swings her whip to paralyze the helpless gardener. Suddenly, a hand catches the whip mid-swing with a sharp, echoing smack. Shanna steps in, blocking the blow to protect the terrified gardener behind her. With a glowing golden eye, Shanna demands to know what the maid is doing. Marianne is completely frozen in shock, horrified to see her mistress standing before her. Blood drips from Shanna's hand as she tightly grips the painful whip. Furious at the cruelty, Shanna screams Marianne's name in pure rage. Shaken to her core, the terrified maid trembles under her lady's intense wrath. Shanna commands Marianne to take the injured servants back to the mansion for immediate treatment. Turning on her heel, Shanna demands Marianne meet her in her room afterward. The scene shifts back to the grand mansion, its windows glowing warmly in the dark night. Safe in her room, Shanna rolls around in absolute panic over the mansion's brutal disciplinary culture. Clutching her head in disbelief, she wonders how her maid could commit such violent acts. A polite knock on the door suddenly interrupts her frantic thoughts. Sheena sits elegantly on the sofa, her injured hand safely bandaged as she waits. Marianne enters, confirming that all the injured servants have been treated and sent to bed. When Shauna asks about the massive sack in her arms, Marianne explains it contains special tools. Marianne nervously reveals that the items are meant for situations just like tonight's punishment. The heavy sack is dumped on the floor, spilling handcuffs, chains, and whips everywhere. Shauna is left utterly speechless and shocked by the dark collection of torture devices. Stunned, she mumbles in confusion while Marianne looks on completely clueless. Shayna flashes a nervous laugh, trying to cover her sheer horror with a fake smile. Looking at the pixelated pile of dark items, Shauna internally orders them all to be burned. When Shauna orders an end to these punishments, Marianne protests in absolute despair. Shauna firmly declares she no longer has any interest in such cruel and painful hobbies. Crying tears of devotion, Marianne insists she must keep punishing others for her mistress's sake. She reveals the terrifying truth. Shauna is none other than the legendary Witch of Suffering. The scene shifts abruptly to a grand, mysterious castle standing tall under the starry night sky. Inside, a handsome black-haired man gasps for air, exhausted from a fierce battle. Surrounded by fallen soldiers in a blood-splattered throne room, the wounded man laments the endless war. Clinging to his glowing sword, the desperate black-haired man declares he urgently needs the witch's power. Amidst a blood-soaked throne room, the sole survivor of a brutal battle wonders if the nightmare has finally ended, only to realize the real conflict is just beginning. The golden imperial crest shines as the crown prince reflects on his years of secret military campaigns. He laments the difficulty of defending against treason as dead loyalists litter the palace steps. The prince's glowing blue eye narrows as he recalls rushing back in secret after his father's death, only to be ambushed by traitors. He instantly recognizes the brutal ambush as a calculated scheme orchestrated by the treasonous duke. Clinging to his shining weapon, he realizes the power of the holy sword alone won't secure his crown. In a desperate bid for survival, the exhausted prince declares he needs the legendary witch's power. Legendary, divine entity of light and flame represents the immense magical force he seeks to control. Ancient murals depict the history of the legendary figure walking among mortals who revered her. Back in the bedroom, the maid drops a bombshell, revealing Shanna is the legendary Witch of Suffering. The maid explains Shanna's curse, revealing she grows stronger by feeding on the pain of others. Shanna furiously rejects using such a vile power, but the maid tearfully begs her to reconsider for her own survival. Plagued by warnings of fatal fevers, Shayna rubs her temples, completely overwhelmed by her bizarre predicament. Shauna drops a pair of elegant slippers onto the floor with a soft top. With a fierce battle cry, Shauna executes a perfect high kick to test her physical strength. The maid stands frozen in absolute disbelief as her once frail mistress performs a flurry of intense martial arts moves. Sheena cheerfully explains she was always weak in her past life, eagerly asking the maid for feedback. She proudly reveals she mastered self-defense in her previous life to overcome her fragile body. Shayna points out the obvious, questioning if she has suffered a single fever since waking up. Shayna beams with joy, noting that regardless of the past, she is currently perfectly healthy. She confidently decides she has absolutely no need to inflict pain on others to stay healthy. The maid hesitates, her hands squirming as she struggles to accept this drastic change. Shayna proposes a one-week trial of peace, ordering an absolute ban on all cruel punishments. A peaceful morning dawns over the grand estate, signaling a new era of kindness. Strolling through the vibrant gardens, Shauna warmly asks the gardener Sean if he is overworking himself. The terrified gardener frantically waves his hands, nervously claiming his cough is nothing to worry about. Sean proudly presents the newly built courtyard, hoping his lady is pleased with his hard work. Shauna is absolutely thrilled, eagerly looking forward to seeing the garden's completion. Her radiant, genuine smile brings a warm, peaceful light to the entire courtyard. Surprised by her kindness, Sean blushes deeply, his fear melting away into pure admiration. Word quickly spreads through the mansion that their terrifying mistress has completely changed. The servants whisper in relief, amazed that their mistakes are now met with forgiveness instead of whips. Some wonder if her sudden recovery has caused her to be possessed by a gentle spirit. Tears of joy flow as the staff pray that this wonderful, peaceful possession lasts forever. Sheena relaxes comfortably on her sofa, enjoying a peaceful day reading her favorite comic book. Anne delivers the great news that all the terrifying torture devices have successfully been reduced to ash. Absolutely delighted, Shayna nods in victory, thrilled that her plan for peace is working flawlessly. Suddenly, Shanna's golden eye widens as a muffled, strange noise catches her attention. Faint, panicked shouts echo from somewhere deep within the mansion's corridors. Shauna gasps in utter disbelief as the terrifying news is delivered to her. A shocking revelation echoes. The loyal head butler has been locked away in prison. Horrified that the butler was locked away for 3 years, Shanna rushes down the stairs to free him. Shayna leaps down the steps with incredible agility, her dress flowing wildly in her haste. She arrives to find a uniformed man standing guard before the massive locked chamber doors. With a heavy groan, the giant doors swing open, revealing a bright light inside. Suddenly, a handsome red-haired man bursts forth, desperately calling out Shanna's name. Without hesitation, the striking man sweeps Shauna into a tight, desperate embrace. Shanna stands frozen in shock as the mysterious, handsome man clings to her tightly. He looks at her with intense concern, while Shayna realizes this handsome stranger is the man from the portrait. As he gently asks if she is injured, Shauna internally faints at his breathtaking, artwork-like beauty. Before Shauna can process her dark identity, a large hand suddenly stretches her cheek. Desperate to ease the tension, Shauna cheerfully reassures her handsome father that she is completely unhurt, leaving him absolutely paralyzed with shock. The red-haired count stares back at her with wide, unblinking eyes, completely dumbfounded by her sudden warmth. Stranded in her own mind, Shauna frantically wonders if she just committed a massive social blunder. The count's glowing golden eyes narrow in pure, unadulterated astonishment. Confused by his reaction, Shayna quickly corrects herself to call him uncle instead, only to find herself pulled back into his tight embrace. Tears of overwhelming relief fill the count's eyes as he celebrates his daughter finally accepting him as her father. Trapped in the tight hug, Shauna's eyes widen in pure panic as she realizes her chaotic mistake. A chaotic scream echoes through the halls of the grand estate, threatening to shatter the morning peace. The warm morning sun streams through the elegant bedroom window, signaling the start of a very awkward day. A decadent afternoon tea spread is served, but the rich treats do little to ease the heavy atmosphere. Sitting rigidly on the sofa, Shauna sweats nervously as the absolute awkwardness of the situation suffocates her. The maid Anne frantically apologizes, deeply regretful for not warning her mistress about her father sooner. Shauna learns the shocking truth that the original mistress had never once called her father anything but cold labels. Holding a delicate teacup, the handsome red-haired count reflects on his years away fighting on the distant battlefields. Shayna recalls how her father only knew how to shower her with luxurious gifts, while she believed he never truly loved her. Shauna takes a nervous, trembling sip of her tea, trying desperately to break the painful silence. Sitting across from each other in the massive parlor, father and daughter silently sip their tea in excruciating silence. Lowering his cup, the count gently assures her that she can address him with whatever title makes her most comfortable. A soft, satisfied smile graces the count's face, completely content with this rare moment of peace. As they look out the window, they discuss his sudden return following the late Emperor's silent funeral. The conversation shifts to the upcoming coronation banquet of Prince Luther, the newly crowned ruler. Shanna's eyes narrow as she recognizes Prince Luther's name, remembering him as a remarkably good-looking jerk. Fragmented memories flash of a dark-haired boy threatening Shauna with a holy sword before desperately holding her hand. Terrified of facing him, Shauna flatly declares that she has absolutely no intention of attending the ceremony. Her firm refusal is met with the grim reality that attendance is mandatory, leaving Shauna determined to avoid him at all costs. The clatter of delicate porcelain echoes as both of them set down their cups, ending their quiet tea time. A heavy, tense silence falls over the beautifully draped parlor once again. The count closes his golden eyes, deeply contemplating his next move. Breaking the silence, the count demands to know the whereabouts of the head butler, Raphael, leaving chibi Shauna completely clueless. Suddenly, a loud, unexpected hiccup breaks her train of thought. Blush rushes to Shauna's face as she desperately tries to hold back her uncontrollable hiccups. The anxious voice of a servant calls out for Anne, echoing through the empty halls. Two faceless servants stand in distress, desperately searching for Anne to help calm their mistress. Sweating dripping down her face, chibi Shauna nervously claims that the head butler is simply feeling unwell today to protect him. Raising his hand, the count ignores her excuse and firmly commands his servant to summon Raphael immediately. Sweating profusely under a metaphorical rain of panic, Shala forces a bright, desperate smile. The massive white doors of the parlor finally begin to slide open. Rhythmic steps echo against the cold floor as a mysterious figure approaches. Standing tall before them is a striking silver-haired butler, wearing a dark eye patch over his left eye. The butler's single cyan eye shines with a sharp, intimidating intensity. Shauna watches in sheer fascination, internally questioning if such a dramatic look is normal for a butler. When the count demands to know the reason for his delay, the butler smooth talks his way out by claiming the young miss ordered him to rest. Shauna is left completely stunned, wondering if the cool eye patch butler is actually covering for her. The count ignores the excuse, strictly ordering the butler to accelerate Shauna's coronation preparations. Closing his single eye, the silver-haired butler bows gracefully, accepting the royal command. He casts a freezing, intensely cold glare that sends shivers down the spine. Shauna stares back at him blankly, completely mesmerized by his chilly demeanor. As the butler formally invites Shauna to begin their preparations, she frantically reaches out to her father for help. Suddenly, a shocking water-splashing sneeze completely startles Shauna, throwing the entire room into pure chaos. Raphael leans in close, delivering a silent telepathic threat to expose Shauna to the count if she does not stand up. Shauna freezes in absolute disbelief, realizing the silver-haired butler is communicating directly inside her mind. While the count continues discussing mandatory banquet preparations, Shauna remains completely baffled by the silent warning. Shauna deeply ponders the mystery, certain she did not mishear the butler's bizarre telepathic warning. Raphael casually nudges a delicate stone statue off the mantel, creating a deliberate, loud distraction. He smoothly commands the household staff to coordinate high society dress inquiries for the upcoming ball. Raphael outlines an incredibly tedious and overwhelming beauty diet, leaving Shanna completely dizzy with exhaustion. The relentless butler demands an absurd daily routine of wine and rose baths for the young lady. Raphael details nightly full-body massages, completely pushing the exhausted Shanna over her limit. As Raphael suggests exotic Eastern hair oils, Shanna finally snaps and demands he stop speaking immediately. Shanna commands absolute silence in the parlor, bringing the butler's exhaustive speech to an abrupt halt. Stopping forward in her blue slippers, Shanna fiercely questions the point of such ridiculously overcomplicated beauty routines. Marching right up to Raphael, she firmly pokes his chest and declares his list entirely unnecessary. Shanna confidently states she will easily select her own gorgeous attire from the catalog when the time comes. With determination shining in her golden eyes, Shanna demands the simple fashion catalog. The butler flatly rejects her bold defiance with a single cold look. An intense frown shows Raphael's growing frustration with his rebellious mistress. Shanna catches him completely off guard by offering a sincere, deeply emotional apology for his past 3 years of suffering. Looking up with warm empathy, Shanna hopes to mend their broken bond. Internally, Shanna resolves to pay back the cruel debts accumulated by the body's original owner. She promises to do anything within her power to satisfy him and make amends. The usually stoic butler stands completely flabbergasted, his pale cheeks flushing red at her unexpected kindness. Raphael aggressively grabs her wrist, fiercely warning her not to mock him with her sudden warmth. Turning her with incredible force, the butler cold-heartedly declares that she is not his true master. With a violent shove, Raphael slams Shanna against the massive glass window. Raphael glares down at her with pure rage, demanding to know how this lowly imposter dared to take his master's place. The tense standoff escalates as the silver-haired butler holds Shanna trapped against the glass. Shanna stares back in sheer panic as her dark secret is fully exposed. The room grows suffocatingly tense as Raphael demands she reveal her true identity. Suddenly, the massive glass window behind them violently shatters into pieces. Unleashing a massive wave of magical energy, Raphael's eye patch flies off, revealing a glowing yellow eye alongside a cyan one. A massive, glowing white wolf emerges from the shattered glass, growling fiercely to protect Shanna. The majestic beast stands firmly, radiating a powerful, protective magical aura. Stunned, Shanna suddenly remembers a mysterious dual-eyed white wolf from her forgotten past. Raphael stares in sheer horror, completely unable to comprehend the impossible creature standing before him. A hidden memory reveals Raphael kneeling before the original cold mistress, who ruthlessly silenced his doubts. The memory shows the cruel goddess Shanna Castilla coldly asserting her absolute dominance over her demon servant. The merciless deity commanded her servant to remain obediently in his corner until summoned. Raphael bowed in submission as Shanna chuckled darkly, warning him that he might not recognize her the next time they met. The memory fades with young Raphael left in absolute silence. The original mistress's final magical transmission reveals her desperate desire to escape her suffocating existence. Back in the present, Raphael demands to know why his master willingly exchanged her soul with a lowly commoner. Glaring with his glowing heterochromatic eyes, Raphael spits that he will never acknowledge her as his master. Fed up with his cold declaration, Shanna aggressively grabs him by his dark collar to shut him up. Shanna demands confirmation on his mind-blowing claim about her soul swap. Pulling him close, Shanna desperately commands the butler to repeat his revelation about her true identity. Her urgent demands echo through the silent parlor as the mind-bending truth of her reincarnation hangs in the air. The two lock eyes in a breathless, high-stakes standoff. Raphael's glowing golden eye twitches as her fierce intensity completely disarms him. Shanna is left utterly frozen in shock, preparing to face the reality of the soul swap that brought her to this world. Raphael turns his head away in sheer embarrassment, unable to withstand his mistress's piercing gaze. This unexpected, flustered reaction leaves Shanna completely dumbfounded by his bizarre behavior. Seizing the moment, she swiftly grabs a sharp silver hairpin from her hair. When he demands to know her intentions, she coldly commands his absolute attention. Standing tall, she prepares to execute a daring, high-stakes gamble to regain control. To his horror, Shanna ruthlessly pricks her own cheek, threatening to permanently scar his precious master's face. He warns her that she wouldn't dare, but she fiercely challenges him to test her resolve. To prove her point, she displays a prominent scar etched across her palm. She reveals she once blocked a devastating whip strike with her bare hands without flinching. A wildfire of absolute determination ignites within her golden eyes. She is completely prepared to go to any length to survive this ordeal. She is driven by a deep, aching desire to return to her beloved family. Her unwavering focus sharpens as she plots her next calculated move. Shanna suddenly deduces that the original Shanna must now be inhabiting her own former body. Suddenly, Raphael violently grabs her wrist to halt her reckless self-harm. Intense, hurried footsteps suddenly echo loudly from the corridor outside. Anne bursts through the door in a total panic about a crisis unfolding outside. But she freezes in shock, misinterpreting the butler's protective embrace as a scandalous romantic encounter. Shanna desperately struggles to break free while Raphael angrily questions her sanity. Witnessing this chaotic scene, Anne screams in absolute horror at what she believes is happening. Suddenly, a sharp magical crack echoes through the chamber. Raphael looks up in startled shock as his magical energy abruptly wavers. A heavy shadow looms over him as he completely loses his footing. Overcome by exhaustion, the mighty silver-haired butler suddenly faints, collapsing directly onto Shanna. Shanna lets out a heavy sigh, struggling to support his dead weight as Anne worries. Anne is left completely bewildered as she tries to piece together the butler's bizarre actions. She assumes the butler locked Shanna away out of a secret twisted adoration. Shanna goes along with the story, asking Anne about the demon prison he was kept in. Anne hesitatingly explains how Raphael protected her and helped cover her tracks. Observing his dormant power, Shauna realizes the butler's connection to the original mistress runs deep. She resolves to get absolute clarity from him the moment he finally wakes. The tense scene transitions to the majestic silent parlor of the estate. Raphael lies peacefully asleep on the bed, recovering from his sudden magical collapse.
Just as Shanna asks Anne for help moving him, a booming voice interrupts them.
The red-haired count and his retinue frantically search the mansion for Shanna. Anne gasps in shock as she hears the master's approaching footsteps. She urgently warns Shanna of a massive crisis and sends her to intercept him. Anne pleads with her mistress to quickly change into attire fit for nobility. A delicate, sparkling high heel steps gracefully down the grand staircase. Shanna emerges wearing a jaw-dropping, elegant white and lavender ball gown adorned with pearls. She gazes down at a massive line of imperial guards standing in the courtyard. Her father gravely informs her that imperial gifts have just arrived for her. Shauna stares in absolute disbelief, wondering why the palace is targeting her. The royal envoy formally demands that House Castilia accept these grand imperial offerings. The handsome messenger holds a sparkling red scroll containing the emperor's command. Shauna and the count kneel on the red carpet to receive the royal decree. The messenger slowly unrolls the scroll, revealing the heavy seal of the throne. The decree bears the unmistakable image of the newly crowned emperor, Prince Luther. The scroll contains a formal royal invitation summoning Shanna Castilla to the coronation. Shauna is left utterly petrified, realizing she cannot escape her impending confrontation with the emperor. An unexpected royal invitation to the upcoming dance demands immediate, high-stakes attention. The majestic prince conveys deep gratitude for a fateful encounter under the starry sky. A lingering promise of an inevitable future meeting hangs heavily in the air. Shauna reacts with absolute shock as the gravity of her situation worsens. The worried count stands deeply troubled by the imperial court's sudden interest. Fear gripping her heart, Shauna realizes the palace guards are closing in fast. Desperate cries echo across the estate as Shauna tries to clear her name. The flawless and highly capable Crown Prince Luther represents a dangerous new threat. The count anxiously ponders the strange events that unfolded the previous night. Shauna urgently begs her father to listen to her side of the story. As dusk falls over the grand estate, a tense silence takes hold. Servants hurriedly carry a massive influx of grand imperial offerings inside. Shayna explains her simple, well-intentioned village adventure from the past week. The count listens with intense skepticism to his daughter's unusual tale. Shauna eagerly emphasizes how crucial the lost relic was to the crown. Relieved by her explanation, the count sighs and accepts her seemingly harmless story. Shayna breathes a massive sigh of relief after dodging her father's suspicion. The two formally dismiss each other to finally seek some rest. The count watches in quiet thought as his daughter retires for the night. A legendary battlefield victory paved the way for the prince's secret return. The doting count gazes fondly at his daughter's radiant and sparkling presence. Chuckling warmly, the proud father dismisses any lingering doubts about her behavior. Under a crescent moon, the mansion settles into a deceptive quietness. Wearing a mischievous grin, Shayna prepares to execute her secret nightly plan. Grand chandelier casts flickering shadows over the silent corridors. In the master bedroom, the sleeping butler groans as consciousness returns. Raphael slowly wakes up, detecting a sweet, overpowering scent of roses. In his hazy state, the butler senses a comforting, unfamiliar presence nearby. Shauna leans in closely, teasingly commanding her sleeping pup to awaken. A beautifully adorned pearled collar rests gently against her throat. Raphael's eyes snap open in utter horror as he finds himself trapped. He gasps in shock, realizing his hands and feet are bound. Shauna coolly asserts her absolute control over their quiet bedroom. She warns him that struggling is futile against her new strategy. Shauna demands a full explanation, threatening a playful yet devious torment. Outraged and terrified, the proud butler fiercely protests his mistress's insanity. Shauna begins her ruthless interrogation by lightly tickling his bare chest. Raphael desperately struggles against the bindings as the tickling begins. Playful pink feathers stroke his skin with relentless, agonizing precision. She asks how he enjoys her torture while his gasps fill the room. Shauna mockingly praises his high endurance against her playful torment. Unable to bear it, the butler desperately begs her to stop. She delivers a final, highly effective feather tickle to break him. A completely flushed Raphael frantically surrenders to her mischievous torment. Shauna halts her weapon of choice, satisfied with her captive's defeat. Defeated, the silver-haired butler finally agrees to reveal all his secrets. Raphael desperately asks his mischievous mistress to get off his chest. The deep, dark night witnesses the whispering exchange of ancient secrets. Shayna realizes with sudden dismay that reversing the soul swap is impossible. She explains the exact fateful moment when their souls were permanently exchanged. A mysterious young witness confirms he watched the entire soul-swapping incident unfold firsthand. The observer reveals he hesitated to save the new soul, surprised by how quickly Shanna fled the chaotic scene. In a hilarious twist of fate, Shauna lands a massive accidental kick right on the Crown Prince's face. Shauna twirls her feather weapon, cutely admitting she genuinely believed her life was on the line. The simple feather spins, sealing the end of their intense and bizarre confrontation. A completely flustered Raphael lies in bed, struggling to process his mistress's wild behavior. Shanna enthusiastically declares that they are finally on the exact same page. She eagerly proposes a mutual partnership to solve their shared crisis. Overflowing with renewed hope, Shanna pumps her fist, ready to tackle the challenges ahead. She outlines her simple deal to help him find his true mistress if he helps her return home. True to her word, Shauna swiftly unties the red ribbons binding Raphael's hands. Free from his bonds, the silver-haired butler locks eyes with his determined mistress in silence. Raphael looks intently at her, formally addressing her as the Shauna from another world. Under the butler's guidance, Shauna slowly begins the grueling process of adapting to her new noble life. Her rigorous training includes walking gracefully with books balanced on her head and learning proper high society dining etiquette. Shanna practices polite conversation, learning how to mask her internal bluntness with elegant, flattering compliments. While Anne enthusiastically awards her a perfect score, the critical butler is far less impressed by her insult delivery. Raphael dryly instructs her to use far more direct and devastating insults next time. To demonstrate, Raphael swiftly unrolls a massive list of examples, calling her a simple country dog. As their bizarre dynamic deepens, a grand secret tutorial of high society officially begins. Deciding their basic etiquette lessons are complete, Raphael prepares to reveal a much more critical secret. Shanna's eyes light up with pure childlike wonder as the topic shifts to actual magic. He explains that holy magic requires divine prayers to channel energy through specially blessed artifacts. These legendary artifacts are sacred holy objects forged centuries ago by the temple's greatest prophets. However, these powerful holy items are strictly reserved for the royal family's exclusive use. Though ordinary citizens fear this magic as a demonic covenant, the truth is far different. As a faithful servant, Raphael explains that his own power is merely borrowed from the family witch. But his deep explanation is completely wasted on Shauna, who has happily dozed off mid-lecture. Waking her up, Raphael gets an earful as Shauna hilariously tests out her newly learned insults. The two engage in a hilarious high-stakes staring contest, refusing to back down. Shauna points and laughs triumphantly when Raphael's flustered blushing completely breaks his cold facade. Mortified by his own weakness, the butler huffs in sheer embarrassment. Annoyed, Raphael wishes for the simplicity of a battlefield before summoning Anne to wrap things up. Obediently, Anne steps forward and tightly draws the room's heavy curtains shut. A sudden heavy darkness falls over the room, instantly setting a tense mood. Sitting in the dim light, Shauna watches with growing confusion as the atmosphere shifts. Raphael explains how the ancestral witch Eileen created a special magic stone to preserve their declining powers. Shauna recognizes the magical red gem as the very jewel the original mistress casually hoarded. Without warning, Raphael dramatically brings the magical red stone to his lips. He repeatedly kisses the stone, attempting to unlock its sealed elemental powers. Watching this bizarre ritual, Shanna cringes in absolute disgust at his embarrassing display. Exhausted and defeated, Raphael collapses onto the floor, huffing heavily from the draining effort. Admitting defeat, Raphael hands her the jewel, though Shanna demands he clean his spit off first. Thoroughly embarrassed, the butler obediently rubs the stone clean with a soft red cloth. Confidently, Shanna takes the gemstone, boasting that she will shatter the seal on her very first try. Closing her eyes, she desperately prays to return to her original world as she brings it close. Suddenly, her raw desperation triggers a colossal, blinding explosion of golden magical energy. A sheer shockwave knocks Shauna out cold, leaving her unconscious on the floor as panic erupts. Though the portal home failed, the ruby's energy miraculously unlocks her ability to read this world's ancient texts. But her writing skills are still a disaster, prompting more endless comedic scolding from her demanding butler. Desperate times call for desperate measures as Shauna unlocks the seals of multiple magical gemstones to master elemental spells. Harnessing the raw elements, she channels blazing fire and surging wind currents in the open fields. A massive, terrifying bolt of lightning suddenly strikes down directly over the grand mansion. Collapsing onto the grass, the exhausted girl gasps for breath as her limited magical reserves completely drain away. Seeing her mistress's plight, the worried maid suggests a dark truth. Real magic power requires someone's misery. The two girls slowly look down with matching expressions of mischievous determination at an unsuspecting target. A colorful arrow points directly down toward a familiar head of silver hair. Sensing the danger, the bewildered silver-haired butler with an eye patch points to himself in sheer disbelief. A single feather floats ominously through a sparkling, colorful void, carrying the threat of a tickled torture session. A desperate scream of absolute agony echoes from the estate as the wicked plan is carried out. Shifting away from the mansion's antics, the monumental day of the grand coronation finally arrives. Brilliant fireworks explode over the majestic imperial castle to celebrate the empire's new era. With her noble status elevated, Shanna reflects on how her wild life has completely exceeded her wildest expectations. Glittering rainbow light and cascading flower petals drift across the sky above the stunning royal palace. Turning his back to the cheering crowd, the newly crowned Emperor Luther stands proudly in his royal robes. Under the glow of the legendary Blue Moon Eye, the majestic palace settles into a tense, fateful night. Merlina, a striking green-haired noblewoman in a deep red gown, flaunts her beauty behind an ornate floral hand fan. Smiling slightly, the green-haired lady demurely downplays her father's glowing praise. Holding a golden cane, the stern Duke Barbossa reminds his daughter of the incredibly high expectations resting on her shoulders. In the dark forest, her arrogant green-haired brother harshly mocks his quiet, downcast sibling. Clutching his chest, the quiet brother sweats profusely while muttering Shanna's name under his breath. Merlina smirks behind her floral fan, confidently vowing to claim the newly crowned emperor for herself. A grain carriage drawn by 4 powerful horses speeds along the dark forest path toward the royal banquet. Inside the carriage, the handsome red-haired count notes that their early departure will get them there before the emperor. Shanna tries to reassure her father with a cheerful grin, only for her stomach to betray her with a loud rumble. An incredibly awkward silence fills the carriage as their rumbling stomachs harmonize in the quiet night. Chuckling warmly, the red-haired count gently reassures his daughter that she has absolutely no reason to be nervous. Peering out the window, he advises her to make a brief greeting to the emperor and depart immediately. Shanna bursts into dramatic comical tears, sweating as she faces her impending encounter. She vividly imagines a terrifying scene of the merciless Emperor Luther ordering her to be burned at the stake. Her heart racing, Shanna realizes she is brazenly walking right into the lion's mouth as the carriage arrives. Inside the grand venue, a massive golden chandelier casts a brilliant, sparkling glow over the elite guests. The opulent ballroom is packed with elegant, high society nobles murmuring excitedly in anticipation. A pair of young noble girls whisper excitedly about the fate of the empire's grandest ladies. Merlina happily absorbs the fawning crowd's attention, laughing softly behind her beautiful floral hand fan. The surrounding gossip declares her to be the most elegant and beautiful noble lady in the entire land. The ladies eagerly predict Merlina will get the first dance, only to be cut off by a sudden booming arrival announcement. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd as the red-haired count and Shanna finally step into the dazzling ballroom. Shanna makes her grand entrance, looking absolutely ethereal in a stunning floral dress amidst blooming red roses. Tapping her elegant white heels, she walks with poise, drawing every single eye in the room to her. Beside her, the red-haired count walks with a confident, proud smile, looking incredibly dashing in his white suit. Merlina and the gossiping ladies stare in absolute horror as the newcomers completely steal the spotlight. Shanna's radiant silver-pink hair and flawless styling leave the entire ballroom utterly mesmerized. The awestruck crowd describes her hair as a mysterious and breathtaking sight. Sweating profusely in chibi form, Shanna panics as she realizes she has accidentally drawn far too much attention. Flashback to their tea time, where the red-haired count reminds her of the emperor's specific invitation for a beautiful lady. In a comical memory, Raphael and Anne scream in shock upon hearing Shanna's outrageous plan to overdress. The silver-haired butler and maid furiously berate her, demanding to know she has completely lost her mind. Stepping forward, Shanna determinedly relies on her comfortable heels to maintain her heightened confidence. Returning to the ballroom, the quiet, green-haired brother bows deeply before Duke Barbossa while harboring dark thoughts.
A sudden shock hits Shanna out of nowhere as a mysterious smiling figure looms right behind her.
The red-haired count worriedly asks if Shanna is okay as she suddenly begins coughing in the middle of the ballroom. Shanna blames the ballroom's dusty air, leaving her father utterly bewildered by her strange excuse. Shanna quickly excuses herself to the balcony to escape the stifling atmosphere of the party before the emperor arrives. Slipping away from her father, Shanna navigates through the glittering crowd of wealthy nobles. She weaves through the dense gathering of high society, desperately seeking a moment of peace. Pushing past the heavy drapes, she steps out into the cool night air. Letting out a deep sigh of relief, Shanna finally finds solace under the brilliant glow of the giant moon. Shanna reflects on her complex predicament, grateful that her secret identity remains safe from her butler. A gentle breeze sweeps across the terrace, carrying away her lingering anxieties. Shanna admires the breathtaking, quiet beauty of the royal palace's labyrinthine gardens below. The magical garden glows with ethereal light, creating a serene sanctuary away from the chaotic ballroom. Delighted by the peaceful scenery, Shanna enthusiastically applauds her luck in finding this perfect hiding spot. But her peaceful isolation is suddenly shattered by the sound of approaching footsteps. Merlina mockingly questions Shanna's sudden happiness, bringing up her starkly different appearance from years ago. Shanna struggles to identify the snobbish ladies confronting her. The brown-haired noblewoman introduces herself as Helen while aggressively hugging the startled Shauna. The blonde girl eagerly introduces herself as Chocolate, leaving Shanna completely overwhelmed by their sudden proximity. Shauna panics internally, completely baffled by the bizarre confrontation unfolding on the balcony. Her mind flashes back to the tragic history of the original lady, Isana Aileen de Castillo. She remembers how the young lady was once overlooked as an insignificant child when she first entered high society. A dark tragedy looms over her past, leaving her as the sole survivor of the horrific fire that claimed her parents. Following that trauma, the original mistress isolated herself, suffering from deep depression and silence. Rumors spread that her health had completely deteriorated, causing her to vanish from the social scene entirely. Back in the present, Merlina's jealousy boils over as she tightly grips her ornate fan in anger. Merlina fumes with rage, insulted that a mere count's daughter would dare overshadow her noble status. Shanna dryly asks the clingy girls to release her, clearly exasperated by the forced interaction. In a shocking petty move, a glass of champagne is suddenly splashed directly in Shauna's face. Merlina mockingly blames the cold wind for her trembling hands, declaring that Shauna's luck has run out. Merlina maliciously targets Shayna's outfit, claiming she is completely unworthy of such a beautiful dress. The hostile lady smugly tells Shauna to leave and find a dress more fitting for her low standing. Shanna stands in silence, dripping with spilled wine as the gravity of the public humiliation sets in. The gossiping duo giggles maliciously, suggesting she borrow a servant's uniform instead. Channeling her past life's tough attitude, Shauna realizes this petty high society bullying is absolutely nothing to panic about. A terrifyingly confident smile spreads across Shauna's face as she prepares to unleash her secret weapon. Shauna effortlessly delivers a savage high society insult, leaving her bullies completely stunned and offended. Unleashing her newly mastered wind magic, Shauna summons a powerful gust that violently sweeps her tormentors off their feet. Sheena determines that bullies must be taught a lesson, though she must carefully hide the true extent of her magical abilities. Shauna playfully decides to show mercy to the trembling bullies, acting as if she is doing them a massive favor. Feigning utter shock, Shauna gasps dramatically at the chaotic mess she just created. Shayna fake worries about the sudden unusual weather as her bruised and battered tormentors sob on the floor. Shauna mockingly compares their disheveled state to a bird's nest, rubbing salt directly into their wounded pride. With a satisfying pluck, she casually tosses away the evidence of her secret magical attack. Sheena cheerfully offers to fetch assistance, leaving the humiliated trio to rot in their own defeat. Shauna internally scoffs at their weak attempt to bully her, reminiscing about her far tougher childhood in her original world. Her triumphant moment is suddenly cut short by a booming announcement declaring the arrival of the formidable Emperor Luther. A hushed silence falls over the ballroom as the legendary ruler descends the grand staircase in all his majestic glory. Shauna grumbles internally at the arrival of the strikingly handsome monarch she was desperately trying to avoid. Shanna panics about her ruined dress, realizing she cannot possibly face the majestic emperor in her current soaked state. Desperate to escape, Shauna resolves to find her father and flee the palace before she is spotted. Sharp blue gaze locks onto its target with intense predatory focus. Shauna jumps in utter surprise, her golden eyes wide with shock. She wonders if they just shared a brief, unspoken look. Across the massive, crowded ballroom, a vast distance separates them. The formidable emperor walks down the grand, red-carpeted staircase. Shanna frantically searches for her father, desperate to escape before she is spotted. Heavy, confident footsteps echo through the grand ballroom. Shayna quickly takes a step, trying to slip away unnoticed. Spotting the emperor, she panics and decides to flee to the opposite side. Her elegant white heels click rapidly as she hurries away. Unrelenting, the emperor's steady footsteps continue to close a distance. She grows increasingly frantic as he relentlessly pursues her. Bowing nobles part as Shayna desperately tries to lose her royal shadow. Feeling a sudden draft of tension, the red-haired count turns his head. The red-haired count looks around with a deeply worried expression. Suddenly, a firm, white-gloved hand grabs Shauna's wrist. Shauna gasps in sheer terror as she is abruptly pulled backward. Emperor Luther demands to know why she is running away from him. Shanna panics internally, convinced the relentless monarch has completely lost his mind. The crowd murmurs in shock as the emperor holds her captive. Shanna frantically struggles to break free from his unyielding grip. She winces in pain as the emperor tightens his hold on her. Emperor Luther mockingly asks if she truly expected him to forget her. The chaotic, unscripted drama of their meeting reaches a tense stalemate. Clinging tightly, he holds her close as she gasps in disbelief. A chilling, unspoken command warns her to obey if she values her life. The emperor's intense blue eyes stare down at her with cold determination. He smugly declares that tonight is the perfect opportunity to expose her. Luther dramatically dips her in a dance pose, stunning the entire ballroom. Horrific memories of an angry mob demanding a witch's execution flash before her. Shauna swallows hard, terrified that her secret magic is about to be revealed. Realizing his cunning nature, Shauna determines that the emperor is incredibly dangerous. He firmly grasps her hand again, refusing to let her go. Luther gently kisses her hand, sending a shockwave of whispers through the crowd. Shauna screams internally in absolute shock as imaginary lightning strikes. Emperor Luther asks to spend the night dancing with her while she begs him to let go. Sheena bitterly reminds herself that she was the one who saved his ungrateful life. He maintains his charming facade, holding her close to his face. The whispering crowd gasps as the emperor formally invites her to dance. Elegant noblewomen excitedly gossip about rumors of the emperor's secret lover. Duke Barbossa watches the spectacle in silence with a grim, unimpressed stare. Surrounded by red roses, Luther and Shanna begin their elegant opening dance. He notes the smell of spilled champagne lingering on her hand. The emperor looks at her with a sharp, suspicious curiosity. In retaliation, Shanna stomps hard on his foot with her heel. Shanna fakes a cheerful laugh, dismissing his comments as a joke. She coldly demands that he stop talking nonsense and focus on dancing. Shanna wonders if he intends to play out a cliché romantic precos. The emperor's eye narrows as he silently processes her bold defiance. They continue to spin gracefully together under the sparkling ballroom lights. Shanna turns around, her brilliant golden eye widening in sheer shock. Emperor Luther dramatically dips her into a stunning ballroom embrace. Looking down at her, the dark-haired emperor declares he needs far more than simple affection. A majestic imperial decree formally announces his proposal to make Asana Castillo his empress. Shanna is completely frozen in disbelief at this outrageous and sudden public declaration. Emperor Luther loudly commands the entire ballroom to give him their absolute attention. He boldly proclaims that the young lady of Castillo shall be his only moon. Count Castillo's jaw drops in utter horror as the imperial announcement rings out. Sheena screams in silent fury, utterly losing her mind at the emperor's crazy stunt. The dramatic, romantic moment is instantly shattered as hooded assassins burst through the glass windows. A black smoke bomb rolls across the floor, rapidly releasing a thick, dark haze. Panicked coughs echo through the ballroom as a choking fog completely blinds the guests. Outside the ballroom, royal guards lie defeated and bleeding on the red-carpeted floor. Count Castillo desperately bellows through the fog, ordering the guards to protect the emperor. Suddenly, a brutal blow strikes the red-haired count from the shadows of the smoke. Count Castillo falls unconscious to the floor, leaving him completely vulnerable to the invaders. Standing proud on the grand staircase, Emperor Luther draws a brilliantly glowing blue sword. His gloved hand firmly grips the hilt of his radiant magical weapon. The emperor confronts the hooded assassins, who demand his total surrender if he wishes to live. An assassin holds Shauna at knife point, ordering the emperor to drop his glowing blade. Shauna dryly rolls her eyes internally at the assassin's embarrassingly cliché villain monologue. She maintains her composure even with a cold, gleaming blade pressed against her neck. Merlina and her snobbish companions look on in absolute terrified shock at the siege. Merlina turns to her father, Duke Barbossa, who watches the unfolding threat with a chillingly calm expression. A frantic guest runs desperately through the corridors of the palace to escape. The assassin whispers a chilling warning, revealing he knows she possesses curse magic. He mockingly details a petty grudge regarding her hounds biting his younger brother's backside. Shauna internally analyzes the extreme danger of her situation, choosing to wait for the perfect opening. The hooded captor aggressively grips her arm, keeping her pinned firmly against him. Shauna gasps in pain as the brute's iron grip tightens around her arm. Emperor Luther's sharp blue gaze narrows as he carefully calculates his next move. Cooperating with the hostile threat, the emperor drops his glowing sword to the ground. With the sword discarded, the villains deploy a glowing golden chain to bind the royal target. The magical golden chains instantly wrap around the emperor's wrists, sparking with dark energy. The hooded assassin gloats triumphantly, mocking the emperor for falling so easily into their trap. He boasts that these ancient specialized chains are designed to render all magic entirely useless. The villain smugly declares that even the legendary witches of old couldn't overcome these restraints. While guests tremble, Duke Barbossa watches from the back with a sinister, victorious smile. A drop of blood trickles down Luther's chin as the sparking magical chains begin draining his energy. Refusing to back down, the emperor coldly demands that they release Shanna now that he has surrendered. The assassin cackles maniacally, stating he has no intention of letting her go unharmed. He pulls the terrified girl closer, promising to make her pay for his brother's injury. Suddenly, a blinding flash of blue energy cuts through the darkness with lethal precision. Blood splatters violently across Shauna's face as the sudden, invisible strike hits its mark. Luther yells a furious command, summoning his legendary companion, Asura, to strike. The terrified assassins scream in horror as the bound emperor unleashes devastating divine magic anyway. A massive explosion of blood erupts as the remaining intruders are instantly obliterated. Shauna stumbles backward, utterly bewildered by the sudden, extremely bloody turn of events. As the threat is neutralized, the severely weakened emperor collapses forward onto Shauna. Luther falls unconscious in her arms, leaving her to support his heavy, battle-worn body. A blood-soaked nightmare begins as Shanna stares in sheer horror, her golden eyes wide with shock. She frantically stammers that the emperor has just slaughtered his captors in cold blood. The Emperor gazes back with chilling calmness, his piercing blue eye locking onto her as he mockingly tells the young witch to relax. In a sudden motion of protective instinct, the Emperor holds Shauna close while raising his glowing blue blade to ward off any remaining threats. Shauna continues to tremble uncontrollably under his firm grip, realizing that escaping this palace alive might be an impossible feat. Terrifying memories of a brutal witch hunt flash before her eyes as she desperately tries to calm herself down, knowing that survival in this violent world means adapting to its cruel rules. Across the blood-stained ballroom, a desperate command rings out, urging her to find a way to survive the unfolding madness. Suddenly, the Emperor collapses heavily onto her shoulder, coughing up fresh blood as Shauna frantically asks if he is still alive. On the carpet, the shattered remains of the magical golden chains lie amid fresh blood as the weakened Emperor confesses that he has pushed his body far past its limits. Even as his strength fades, the Emperor looks up to softly demand that she address him by his personal name, Luther. With his vision fading into darkness, Luther dizzyingly questions if she has forgotten that she was once the only one who called him by that name. Left holding the unconscious monarch, Shauna silently curses him for fainting at the worst possible moment, while a surviving assassin laughs mockingly at her impending doom. Lethal blades suddenly slice through the air, aimed directly at the defenseless para. With death closing in, Shauna bitterly realizes she has run straight into a dead end. Unleashing her hidden power, a massive bolt of lightning strikes the Imperial Palace, shattering the night sky. A suspenseful pause grips the battlefield as the entire castle rumbles under the weight of her hidden power. Fuming with absolute rage, Shauna decides that these relentless assassins have finally crossed the line. A blinding storm of lightning erupts inside the grand ballroom, sending the terrified invaders screaming in panic as they realize they are facing a monstrous power. Standing proudly amidst the magical storm, Shauna raises her hand to channel the elemental fury as onlookers scream in absolute terror that she is a witch. As the magical storm subsides, the brilliant purple light gently fades from her fingertips, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Trembling survivors slowly pick themselves up from the floor, whimpering in confusion and asking if the nightmare is finally over. A terrified green-haired noble sits in his own urine on the floor, frantically thinking that he has no solution unless he can somehow display his own power to calm the crowd. Holding two crying children close, a green-haired noblewoman decides that revealing her secret power now is her only option. In a dazzling display, the noblewoman unleashes her own glittering magical aura to protect those around her. Surrounded by a haze of mystical energy, Shauna keeps a watchful eye on her surroundings while shielding the unconscious Emperor. Looking down at the sleeping monarch, she resolves to return the favor and save his life just as he did for her. With perfect accuracy, Shauna hurls a piece of the broken golden chain straight into an assassin's face, making him shriek in agony. With a sweet, terrifying smile, Shauna mockingly advises the remaining assassin to sit tight and wait to be dragged to the royal dungeons. The cornered assassin merely laughs maniacally, completely unfazed by her threats. A chilling threat echoes through the darkness as the assassin warns the young witch that she is only digging her own grave. Suddenly, a violent splash of blood erupts across the hall as the final clash begins. Shauna screams in absolute horror, pleading with the self-destructive zealots to stop their crazy suicide mission. Blades find their marks in a swift, bloody frenzy as the final intruders groan in agony and collapse. The horrific aftermath of the slaughter leaves Shauna completely speechless as she stares at the lifeless bodies pooling in blood. Gagging at the gruesome sight, Shauna covers her mouth in disgust, wishing things had never turned this bloody. A golden cane slams heavily onto the carpet, cutting through the silence with a sharp, demanding echo. The green-haired Duke Barbossa steps forward with glowing pink eyes, furiously ordering everyone to stop standing around and move. The formidable nobleman glares with supreme authority, his voice booming across the terrified crowd. Wielding his authority, Duke Barbossa commands the guards to take the Emperor to safety, tend to the wounded, and immediately clean up the disgusting corpses. A pink-haired noblewoman sighs in relief, praising the Duke's leadership as the frantic servants scramble to obey his orders. As the Duke strides past, he angrily questions why the Imperial Knights have still not arrived to secure the palace. Suddenly, a finger of blame is pointed directly at Shauna, catching her completely off guard. A group of cowering nobles turns on Shauna, glaring at her with cold, untrusting eyes as she desperately reminds them that she is the one who saved their lives. Shauna gasps in utter betrayal, realizing the very people she rescued are now viewing her as a monster. The ungrateful crowd erupts into a rabid frenzy, screaming that another dangerous witch has infiltrated the Empire and must be burned alive. Cornered and furious, Shauna fiercely warns the angry mob to back off unless they want to be roasted alive by her magic. Before she can defend herself, a cowardly blow from the shadows strikes her hard from behind, cutting her warning short. As she loses consciousness and begins to fall, a pair of strong arms suddenly catches her. The Emperor has awakened just in time to catch his falling savior. A blonde knight frantically screams a warning, pleading with the Emperor to stay away from the dangerous witch. Luther glares back with terrifying, glowing blue eyes, unleashing an oppressive aura of pure murderous intent that freezes the entire room. Overwhelmed by the Emperor's terrifying wrath, the knight instantly bows in absolute submission, leaving us to wonder, will Luther destroy anyone who dares to touch his savior, or has Shauna's identity as a witch sealed her doom forever?
The Duke of Bale desperately pleads with the Emperor to hand over the girl, claiming her celestial body is far too important and must be his.
Glowing, mystical full moon shines over the imperial palace, harboring the secret that she is the earthly vessel of the moon goddess. Tensions skyrocket as Emperor Luther coldly asks Duke Barbossa if he truly dares to disobey his absolute imperial command. Drifting into a deep slumber, the girl is haunted by warm, mocking laughter as she dreams of the loving family she left behind. Lost in the dark voids of her own mind, she laughs through her tears, overwhelmed by an agonizing sense of isolation. Staring at her own translucent, glowing hands in the void, she gasps in absolute confusion at her unfamiliar form. Her glowing gold eyes widen in sheer terror as she grips her face, realizing she is trapped in a body that doesn't belong to her. Looking at her former short-haired self with a bitter smile, she wonders if the girl standing there isn't actually her. A brilliant, glittering revelation shatters her doubts as the truth rings out. She is the real Asana Castillo. A harsh, demanding shout suddenly pierces her subconscious, violently ordering the stupid woman to wake up immediately. Gasping awake, Shauna finds herself being yelled at by Raphael, the white-haired eye-patch boy who mockingly asks what could possibly be more terrible than her current appearance. Shauna blinks in utter bewilderment as she looks around, realizing she is trapped inside a massive golden cage. Staring at her wrists, Shayna examines the heavy golden magic sealing cuffs, wondering if this is yet another artifact designed to suppress her powers. Shayna hilariously recalls her grand plan to turn her terrifying captors into a complete outdoor barbecue with her magic. A sudden hit of clarity strikes Shanna as she finally remembers the chaotic events that landed her in this gilded prison. Looking at the massive golden cage towering over him, Raphael asks Shauna if she has world-class acting skills or if she has finally realized the gravity of her dire situation. Unbothered by her captivity, Shauna simply yawns and stretches, completely exhausted from the madness of the previous night. Whisper-quiet voices echo through the grand stone hallway as Shauna admits she is in deep trouble while Raphael merely scoffs. Crossing his arms in frustration, Raphael scolds Shauna for exposing her dangerous magic at a public social gathering when his master had worked so hard to keep it a secret. Raphael furiously demands to know what she was thinking trying to blow everyone up with fireworks, while Chibi-Shauna casually claims she was basically just trying to defend herself. Shauna asks Raphael how on earth he sneaked in, to which the smug, white-haired boy replies that he obviously came through the window. Raphael quietly explains that while he can easily remove her heavy golden shackles, breaking her out of the massive golden birdcage is completely impossible. Looking down through the thick golden bars, the eye-patch-wearing boy locks eyes with the white-haired prisoner. Shauna's golden eyes widen in shock as a heartfelt, glowing promise resonates in the air, swearing that no matter what, he will come to save her. A solemn silence falls over the stone room as Raphael looks away, his heart heavy with the dangerous reality of his mission. Reaching out to touch his hand through the golden bars, Shauna softly thanks Raphael for his unwavering loyalty. A deep blush creeps across Raphael's face, catching him completely off guard as he struggles to hide his embarrassment. With a swift, agile leap, the white-haired boy throws himself out of the stone window to make his escape. Enveloped in a burst of sparkling blue light, Raphael instantly transforms into a majestic white wolf as he leaps into the night sky. Left alone in the cage, Shauna frantically calls after him, desperately wanting to know if Anne and her family are safe. Gripping the golden bars in absolute panic, Shauna realizes he has already vanished into the darkness. Heartbreaking memories of her worried family, crying maids, and the smiling red-haired count flood her mind, leaving her wondering if they are safe. Staring through the bars, Shauna sighs with a gentle, bittersweet smile, lamenting that they had only just begun to grow closer. A soft, pink glow envelops her thoughts as she reminds herself of the painful truth. She is not his real daughter. High above the imperial castle, the massive, brilliant full moon continues to watch over the sleeping kingdom. Heavy rhythmic footsteps echo down the red-carpeted hallway as a dark blue-haired figure marches with supreme authority. The heavy double doors fly open as Emperor Luther strides majestically into the room, heading directly toward the massive golden cage. Panicking at his sudden arrival, Chibi-Shauna decides she has no choice but to lie down and pretend to be fast asleep. The Emperor's polished boots click softly against the floor as he approaches the seemingly unconscious girl. Luther narrows his glowing blue eye, staring intensely at her quiet form. Shauna flinches in surprise as the Emperor bluntly points out that her acting skills are absolutely terrible. A rare, devastatingly handsome smile graces Luther's face as he enjoys her hilarious reaction. Sitting up inside her golden cage, Chibi-Shauna grumbles to herself that she was never an actress to begin with. Surrounded by a magical cascade of colorful flowers, Shauna boldly asks the Emperor when he plans to burn her or if he would rather cut her head off instead. Lounging comfortably within her gilded prison, Shauna dryly calls Luther incredibly indecisive for wanting to kill her as a witch one minute and marry her the next. The Emperor remains silent, his sharp profile showing a mix of amusement and calculated restraint. Flashbacks of Raphael's blushing face spark in Shauna's mind as she compares the Emperor to her loyal protector. Luther looks back with a serious, intense expression, refusing to let her provocative words slide. Refusing to be intimidated, Shauna hilariously flips the Emperor off with both middle fingers, showcasing her absolute lack of respect. As the golden crest of the Titan royal family gleams, a dark secret is revealed. A terrifying curse has plagued the royal lineage for over a century. A dark, ancient blood curse binds the imperial family to the horrific destiny. Slaying the legendary beast unleashed a terrifying legacy of spilled blood. Dragon's volatile magic erupted into a catastrophic storm of destruction. In desperation, the Emperor allowed a powerful witch to seal the raging storm inside his heart. The glittering golden crown remains a symbol of this cursed imperial lineage. Luther stands before the massive cage, recognizing his role as the cursed heir. Horrific memories of childhood blood and tears continue to haunt him. He closes his eyes tightly to block out the agonizing past. Luther speaks of the secret curse while Shanna's mocking laughter echoes from her cage. Shanna laughs hysterically, mockingly questioning his claims of royal purity. Luther glares back with a cold, terrifying gaze of pure menace. Shauna instantly breaks into a nervous sweat under his deadly stare. Luther steps forward, warning that time is running out as the seal weakens. Deep inside his chest, the sealed heart slowly fractures under the strain. Shanna crosses her arms, dryly asking why his imminent doom should concern her. She gasps in surprise as his hand gently reaches through the golden bars. Luther gazes at her with deep, desperate intensity. Touching his hand, Shauna suggests the prophecy might have a different meaning. Luther quietly warns her that surviving this ordeal will take massive effort. Shauna dramatically flops onto her back, demanding time to consider his marriage proposal. She comfortingly recalls how happy she is to have her loyal protector Raphael nearby. Luther stands in heavy silence, clutching the cold metal of her cage. With a dramatic swirl of his red cape, the Emperor turns to leave. He coldly declares his intention to erase the Castillo family from existence. Luther threatens to seize their assets, enslave the servants, and execute Count Jade. Walking down the hallway, the Emperor casually plans the Count's execution. Terrified for her family's safety, Shauna desperately screams for him to stop. Luther ignores her frantic cries, continuing his march toward the double doors. Shauna yells out, asking if marrying him will finally save her loved ones. She desperately grips the golden bars, her face pale with mounting panic. Pushed to her absolute limit, she finally screams her surrender and agrees to marry him. Hearing her desperate submission, the Emperor instantly halts in his tracks. A triumphant, subtle smile spreads across the Emperor's face. The heavy door slams shut, leaving Shanna completely stunned in her prison. Shanna collapses heavily to her knees as despair washes over her. Clutched in agonizing panic, she weeps bitterly over her forced choice. Heartbreaking visions of her worried family and servants overwhelm her thoughts. A line of silent, faceless maids suddenly arise before her. A brief, bizarre break in reality momentarily halts the high-stakes drama. A sudden, sharp creaking sound echoes through the quiet chamber. Shauna looks up in absolute shock, her golden eyes wide with confusion. The maids bow deeply, welcoming her as the Empire's sacred mum. They praise her divine status, calling down eternal blessings upon her. Luther quietly curses the true culprit behind her confinement. Shauna mentally panics about her complete lack of relationship experience. The terrified maid trembles under her gaze as Shauna bemoans her fate. Shauna is suddenly dunked headfirst into a splashing bath. Shauna screams in shock at the incredibly hot temperature of the water. The panicked maids desperately prostrate themselves on the floor to apologize. The sobbing maids beg the benevolent moon goddess for mercy, leaving us to wonder if Shauna will spare them or if her fiery wrath will consume the entire palace. In the Grand Palace bathhouse, Shauna quickly corrects her terrified maids, explaining she was merely startled by the water temperature. The panicked maids tremble, dreading their new mistress's wrath. Shauna silently observes her crying maids, contemplating her next move. Shauna realizes she must choose between intimidation and absolute panic. Shauna decides that maintaining her fearsome reputation is her best strategy. A playful, devious smile spreads across Shauna's face. A brilliant, mischievous idea suddenly sparks in Shauna's mind. Shauna magnanimously announces she will show mercy, relieving her servants. Shauna flashes an angelic smile to lower their guard. Hesitant maids explain they must stay to serve the Empress. Shaina prepares her most convincing, villainous performance yet. Shanna menacingly suggests bathing in young blood to keep her skin flawless. The maids freeze in absolute terror as she questions her beauty secrets. Shauna falsely claims the Emperor gifted her the maids for bathing. She cheerfully promises to use their blood to look stunning tonight. Her horrifying fake desire for perfect skin echoes through the room. Deafening shrieks of pure panic erupt from the petrified maids. The traumatized servants scramble frantically to escape her presence. Tranquility returns as Shauna enjoys the vast, empty bath. She contentedly notes that the fleeing maids left her essentials. Shanna hums a cheerful tune while preparing her bath. Lush pink roses transform the bath into a serene sanctuary. Shauna happily splashes in the warm flower-filled waters. The peaceful bath provides a brief moment of pure relaxation. Raphael suddenly teleports directly out of the water, summoning his magic. Startled Shanna gasps, shocked by his sudden watery arrival. Raphael screams in absolute embarrassment after invading her bath. A chaotic splash erupts as water floods the entire chamber. A soaking wet Raphael grumbles about her lack of normal boundaries. He explains his rare ability to travel instantly through clean water. Shauna cheerfully commends his teleportation skill and her perfect planning. Despite her optimism, Raphael remains deeply worried about the future. His sharp blue eye narrows with intense focus. Raphael demands they flee, but Shauna warns him of complications. Shauna launches into a fast, detailed explanation of her dilemma. Raphael screams in disbelief at her decision to marry the Emperor. He vehemently orders her to stop acting foolishly and reconsider. Raphael passionately argues that execution is preferable to this madness. His head throbbing, Raphael struggles to maintain his sanity. A tearful chibi Shauna agrees that escaping is highly problematic. Raphael's gaze darkens as he coldly proposes assassinating the Emperor. Tense, heavy silence lingers as she processes his threat. Shauna warns that killing him will unleash a fatal magical blast. Chibi Raphael sheepishly scratches his head, realizing his mistake. The scene shifts to the grand, empty imperial throne room. Emperor Luther regally prepares for the fateful wedding ceremony. His sharp blue eye reflects cold, unyielding determination. The Emperor stands resolute, ready to face his destiny. A hand reaches out to seal the tragic imperial marriage. Shanna emerges as the beautiful crowned empress of the empire. Sinister realization strikes the new empress during her own wedding ceremony. Their hands lock in a tight, unyielding grip of mutual defiance. Before the high priest, the cursed couple stands under divine witness. He recalls negotiating strict terms in exchange for her submission. Her demands protect her loyal companions and secure her family's safety. The solemn ceremony continues as they prepare to seal their fate. Tension thickens as the mismatched pair shares a silent, awkward glance. The Emperor remains silent, keeping his true intentions completely hidden. The new Empress suppresses her mounting anxiety with absolute determination. A single bead of sweat betrays her outward calm. The priest declares the legendary union of sun and moon restored. She is left completely flabbergasted by the priest's grand announcement. The priest invokes divine blessings of protection upon the realm. Heavy silence briefly descends upon the grand imperial hall. A sudden, shocking realization begins to dawn on the Empress. She realizes the cunning Emperor willingly accepted her final demand. She blushes furiously, realizing she was left to suffer alone. Inwardly, the flustered Empress curses her cold-hearted new husband. A highly smug, victorious smirk plays upon the Emperor's lips. His sharp blue eyes glint with calculated, triumphant satisfaction. He silently revels in his absolute victory over the bride. The entire court kneels in deep reverence to their rulers. Deafening cheers and blessings echo through the massive cathedral hall. Crowd loudly hails the newly crowned sovereign rulers. Petals rain down as the entire empire celebrates this union. Time passes, shifting the scene to a tranquil new day. A single red petal gently falls into a teacup. In a sun-drenched garden sanctuary, a peaceful tea party is held. She silently reflects on her unbelievable new title as Empress. She slowly stirs her tea, lost deep in her thoughts. She resolves that her new royal status won't change her. Lounging in her yellow gown, the Empress appears deeply bored. Anne runs forward with tears of pure joy in her eyes. The loyal maid is absolutely thrilled to see her mistress. Ishana happily calls out to her long-lost maid and greedy. Anne's overly formal prostration leaves the Empress feeling incredibly awkward. A striking red-haired man suddenly approaches her garden pavilion. His piercing golden gaze locks onto her with unwavering intensity. The legendary Rose Sword formally offers his loyalty to her. Gain kneels in respect as they prepare for the next chapter. The peaceful garden gazebo stands quiet amidst the unfolding drama. She recalls the terrifying chaos of their first fateful encounter. Memories of her father's fragile, unconscious state flash by. Gain laughs heartily, expressing his profound relief and joy. She stares deadpan at the ridiculous love-at-first-sight story fabricated by the palace. The official rumors paint a picture of passionate, star-crossed royal lovers. Gain admits he was completely stunned by their sudden marriage. She forces a polite laugh to maintain her royal composure. Inwardly, she wonders what kind of game the Emperor is playing. He claimed it was destiny, leaving her to face a dangerous future. A dark storm brews over the empire as the black-haired Emperor stands in solemn silence. Her vibrant red dress contrasts sharply with her overwhelming sense of isolation. Under the weight of her choice, the Emperor remains cold and resolute. A wave of deep relief washes over them as the danger temporarily fades. Gain quietly sips his tea, reflecting on the heavy burdens of loyalty. Gently speaks of fatherhood, bridging the gap between them with worth. Her father beams with pride and joy, glad to see his daughter safe. The young maid nervously prepares the tea, anxious not to make any mistakes. She warmly asks her father to drop formalities, seeking comfort in their bond. Gain readily accepts his new mission with a gentle, determined smile. She grips her dress in a tight, nervous clutch as tension rises. He vows to protect her, even if it demands his ultimate sacrifice. His words carry the heavy weight of an unbreakable knightly pledge. He reminds her that she will always be his beloved daughter regardless of her destiny. He urges her to trust in his unwavering love and belief. Gain's expression turns grave as he delivers a highly critical warning. A quiet tranquility settles over the beautiful palace garden. Shauna beams with pure happiness, deeply thanking her father for his love. The nervous Mead hesitates, wondering if she should bring more refreshments to the chatting pair. She recalls her father's vital advice on surviving the complex imperial court. A dark warning urges her to remain vigilant against a dangerous political foe. Shanna jokingly dismisses the terrifying Duke as a seaweed-haired old grandpa. Gain and the maids struggle to hold back their sudden childish laughter. Her father lists the treacherous Duke and his highly ambitious children as key threats. The Duke's family emblem represents an overwhelming monopoly over the imperial markets. Their astronomical wealth grants them immense power to manipulate the entire economy. She notes that their incredible influence is a highly dangerous double-edged sword. Gain suggests it is more like a curved sword before dismissing the maid. Sanguine drops emphasize the Emperor's dark suspicion of the Duke's deadly assassination plots. A grim reminder of past violence stains their memory with spilled blood. She questions the logic of the Duke's plots, debating the political moves of their rivals. Gain gravely cautions her never to underestimate the Duke's true political power. He points out that the Duke's foolish sons lack any real talent or competence. The Duke's spoiled daughters appear equally pathetic, crying and panicking over minor setbacks. A chilling realization dawns that the Duke himself is a far different threat. The sinister Duke of Barbossa glares with cold, calculating pink eyes. His green-haired son Marcel trembles nervously, fearing his father's terrifying judgment. The shadow of his father's expectations falls heavily upon young Marcel. The demanding question forces Marcel to reveal his connection to the new Empress. His father's cold voice calls out his name, demanding immediate answers. The Duke reveals he is fully aware of Marcel's recent romantic pursuits. He scolds Marcel for missing a golden opportunity to capture Ludwig during the chaos. The Duke's eyes glow with sudden interest as he inquires about the lady's identity. A cold sweat breaks on Marcel as his father questions his relationship with the Empress. Stuttering in absolute terror, Marcel admits his past connection to Shauna. The Duke calmly inhales from his pipe as his son waits in sheer panic. He slowly exhales a plume of smoke, calculating his next insidious move. A sinister realization sparks as the Duke finds this turn of events highly intriguing. He coldly orders an immediate imperial appointment with the new Empress. A dark, triumphant smirk promises trouble for the newly crowned ruler. A dangerous political storm brews as the cold-hearted Duke plots to test the new Empress's wits. This marks the beginning of her secret struggle to survive the cutthroat imperial court. The majestic imperial palace stands quiet, hiding the deep tensions within its walls. Ludwig is utterly shocked by the impossible amount of reading she completed so quickly. He notes that the scrolls contained complex ancient languages from neighboring realms. The Emperor closely inspects the text, searching for any signs of deception. An intense battle of wit silently unfolds in the Grand Palace study. She inwardly panics, feeling as though she has been suddenly ambushed. He casually tests her comprehension, keeping his true suspicions completely hidden. The loyal maid confidently boasts about her mistress's effortless genius. She smoothly claims her incredible speed reading is purely due to magic. Ludwig's sharp blue eyes narrow as he gets tripped up by her strange slang. She quickly fabricates a clever cover story to explain the modern terminology. He leaned in dangerously close, pointing out the glaring contradictions in her past. Physical distance vanishes as he corners her with absolute determination. She breaks into a nervous sweat, struggling to maintain her perfect composure. Inwardly, she mocks his complete ignorance of regional cultures. He stares down at her with a chilling, unreadable expression. She holds her breath, bracing herself for his next suspicious move. She quickly offers a polite apology to diffuse the rising tension. A heavy silence lingers as they size each other up. She takes a quiet breath, hoping her excuse successfully swayed him. Her heart skips a beat as he prepares to tend his subject. The Emperor grants her a reprieve, smoothly accepting her explanation. He instantly shifts gears, boldly asking when they will share a bedchamber. He explains that their physical closeness is vital to restoring the magical seal. She frantically unfurls a massive crimson scroll to deflect his sudden advances. She quickly pivots to a severe regional crisis to distract him. Ludwig's romantic schemes are utterly shattered by her sudden political lecture. He begrudgingly explains the horrific water contamination plaguing the western provinces. The tragic reality of the crisis shows the wealthy surviving while peasants suffer. He laments that his current solutions will take far too long to work. A brilliant spark of modern inspiration suddenly flashes in her mind. She boldly promises to reveal an incredibly simple water filtration system. She eagerly describes a multi-layered filtration method using basic elements. Her detailed diagram reveals a surprisingly modern plastic bottle design. She fondly reminisces about the basic science concepts from her past life. She further offers to cast powerful growth magic to save the forests. She plans to enlist Leaf, the white wolf, to purify massive water reservoirs. A victorious, highly satisfied smile graces her lips as she finishes. She proudly challenges him to deny her immense value to the Empire. Ludwig suddenly disarms her with a genuinely dazzling, breathtaking smile. She freezes in absolute shock, her cheeks flushing a bright pink. He bids her a smooth farewell, leaving her completely flustered. The Emperor walks away, leaving a trail of absolute chaos behind him. She desperately clutches her racing heart, denying her sudden attraction to him. She aggressively scolds herself, refusing to fall for his handsome face. Terrifying flashbacks of past executions force her back to survival mode. She locks her emotions away, determined to stay focused on her mission. The quiet study fades, setting the stage for their next high-stakes clash. The stage is set as a highly anticipated royal meeting is suddenly fast-tracked. The white-haired youth Leif listens with an incredibly bored and unimpressed expression. Unbothered by the impending storm, Shauna happily munches on a sweet palace treat. Leif and Shauna casually bond over their mutual disdain for the annoying palace nobility. She quickly reassures her companion that the Imperial Kitchen's desserts are absolutely world-class. Her loyal maid Anne frantically waves her hands, politely declining the sweet offer. Anne's face fills with genuine dread as she questions the Empress's absolute fearlessness. A grim historical record details the Duke's brutal, bloody annihilation of a rebellious trade union. Driven by fierce determination, Shanna abruptly postpones her dinner with the Emperor to confront the Duke. Leif desperately unbuttons his shirt to offer her his magical energy before she rushes off. Shauna is deeply moved as she clutches the glowing purple feather containing his power. A sudden chaotic flight under the armpits leaves her screaming in sheer bewilderment. The quiet grand balcony stands empty as the location of the meeting draws near. The green-haired Duke of Barbossa marches down the long red carpet with cold confidence. The calculating Duke is genuinely amused that the young Empress is actually willing to meet him. The bright red sunset shines through the grand doorway, casting an ominous crimson glow. The formal announcement rings out as Johannes Lou Barbossa offers his royal greeting. The powerful Duke kneels deeply before Shanna as she sits regally upon the golden throne. He maintains a polite, diplomatic facade, responding with an incredibly smooth, subservient tone. Shauna is instantly haunted by a chilling memory of his past murderous threats against her. A cunning, highly calculating smile plays on the Duke's lips as he plays his political game. He recalls his son Marcel stumblingly trying to explain his past relationship with Shauna. Flashbacks reveal young Marcel joyfully riding a stolen horse through the night. The foolish young noble lost his way in the darkness, urging his horse onward. Guided by a mysterious, ethereal light, he stumbled upon a breathtaking vision under the moon. Shauna, glowing with otherworldly beauty, warned the trespassing young master to leave. A playful, mesmerizing smile crossed her face as she admitted her own profound boredom. The mysterious lady playfully teased the blushing young man, admitting her absolute lowliness. Stunned by her majestic presence amongst the ancient ruins, he begged to know her name. A secretive, alluring smile graced her lips as she prepared to reveal her identity. Her golden eyes gleamed with mischief as she formally introduced herself to the boy. With absolute resolve, the mysterious woman claimed the name Shauna as her own destiny. Back in the present, Shauna's eyes widen in absolute horror as a terrifying realization dawns. An overwhelming panic sets in as she wonders if she was merely a pawn from the beginning. She clutches her throne in terror as a memory of a transdimensional magic circle flashes by. The sinister Duke smirks, eagerly waiting to see how the Empress responds to his hidden cards. A vintage map reveals the Duke's suspicion that she seeks to conquer the entire empire. Shanna rests her head on her hand, internally screaming as she struggles to formulate a reply. She suddenly realizes the Duke is completely oblivious to her true nature as a transmigrated soul. Emboldened by his false assumptions, the Duke prepares to lay out a highly enticing political offer. He dramatically offers his own romanticized son Marcel as a sacrificial lamb for her pleasure, calmly notes that his son's foolish, obsessed crimes technically warrant a public execution. Shanna's heart beats wildly in sheer shock at the sheer absurdity of the situation. The ruthless Duke cold-heartedly offers to let her enslave or hang his own child. An explosive inner panic leaves Shauna questioning if she is being offered a male concubine. The groveling Duke continues his desperate performance, determined to appease the new Empress. He ruthlessly throws his own spoiled daughter into the deal to cover up his family's past sins. Shauna gasps in absolute open-mouthed disbelief at his staggering lack of parental empathy. She looks at his family picture in disgust, amazed he would sell his children while protecting his heir. The brilliant light of the throne room shines down as the Duke awaits her final, world-altering decision. The calculating green-haired Duke vows his family's eternal loyalty to Empress Shauna, predicting a glorious era of imperial expansion. Beneath his smooth diplomatic declaration lies a hidden agenda, his cold expression completely unreadable as he waits for her reply. Sitting regally upon her golden throne, Empress Shauna remains dead silent, her jeweled tiara catching the light as she processes his suspicious offer. Inwardly, the pink-haired Empress is utterly disgusted, screaming in pure irritation at the Duke's shameless and petty political schemes. She immediately dismisses his grand promises, realizing his transparent attempt to manipulate her is completely useless. Reclining with absolute confidence, she prepares to deliver a crushing blow to the powerful Duke's fragile ego. Realizing her defiance, the Duke's smug facade instantly cracks, his purple eyes narrowing in sudden anger. An ominous rumble of thunder echoes through the hall, matching the rapid escalation of their high-stakes battle of wits. In a shocking display of raw magic, a sudden downpour and lightning storm manifest right inside the throne room, catching the Duke completely off guard. She coldly asserts her supreme authority, declaring that her desires are absolute and will always be achieved. With a tiny spark of brilliant golden magic dancing on her fingertip, she playfully questions why she would ever accept his subpar offer. Under the intense magical pressure of the storm, she utterly demeans his high standing, reducing the proud Duke to a mere ordinary noble. Delivering a chilling final warning, she compares his potential rebellion to a useless biting dog that must be kept in check. The majestic, heavily detailed white doors of the grand throne room stand closed, locking in the tension of their explosive confrontation. The heavy doors are suddenly slammed shut with a deafening crash, officially bringing their intense meeting to an end. The moment she is finally alone, the majestic Empress completely deflates, slumping over on her golden throne in sheer exhaustion. Panting heavily, Shauna desperately craves sweet treats to soothe her incredibly frayed nerves. She sits quietly in the vast empty throne room, the grand scale of her perilous new reality weighing heavily on her shoulders. She tries to calm her racing mind, resolving to be far more patient and composed in her future political clashes. Exhausted but determined, she physically prepares herself to face the next massive challenge of the day. Staring at the empty dual thrones, she realizes she must immediately coordinate her next move with Emperor Ludwig. The scene shifts to the dark, quiet night sky as the political storm begins to settle over the empire. Under the brilliant light of the full moon, the Duke's massive, luxurious estate stands in quiet tension. Inside the dimly lit parlor, the humiliated Duke stands by the window while his green-haired son and daughter wait in tense silence. His daughter nervously watches her father's back, sensing the terrifying rage boiling just beneath his quiet posture. She hesitantly asks about his disastrous audience at the palace, deeply unsettled by his unusually grim appearance. Ignoring her entirely, the bitter Duke addresses his green-haired son, Edmund, who responds with nervous obedience. In a sudden shift of power, the Duke coldly hands over control of their vital Western business operations to his son. Staring out into the night, he demands that Edmund dramatically multiply their family's income to recover from this political defeat. Shaking with pure, unbridled fury, the Duke clenches his fists, unable to accept being utterly humiliated by a young girl. The sinister silhouette of the Empress haunts his thoughts, fueling his obsession to destroy her at any cost. Meanwhile, a relaxed Shauna enjoys a luxurious indoor bath, happily dipping her feet in the pool surrounded by fresh apples. While she relishes her luxurious imperial lifestyle, her white-haired companion with the eye patch, Lev, frantically panics over the dangerous situation. He frantically scolds her for her reckless and impulsive behavior in attacking a powerful Duke head-on. Shaina casually munches on a fresh green apple, admitting she simply didn't expect the Duke to be so transparently hostile. Lev pleads with her to never let her guard down around the treacherous imperial court. The white-haired youth reveals he is actually scheduled to meet with the Emperor himself to resolve their issues. Looking up at the starry sky through the grand glass dome, she notes that it is far too late for a formal meeting. Lev's face instantly flushes bright red as he suddenly blurts out that they will be sharing a bedchamber tonight. Unbothered by his panic, the pink-haired Empress casually walks away, leaving him completely stunned. Refusing to let her dodge the issue, the white-haired youth lunges forward to stop her in her tracks. He desperately grabs her shoulders, pleading with her to value her life and take the danger seriously. In a desperate reminder, he points out that her current body belongs to the last witch of the Castilla family, not herself. Holding her close, Lev stares intensely into her eyes, pleading with her to understand the high stakes of her survival. She playfully turns the tables on him, teasingly pointing out his obvious dislike for the Emperor. His face turns beet red as he passionately argues back, trying to maintain his composure. Blushing furiously, Lev mutters that sharing a bedchamber requires genuine, deep feelings between two people. Sweating nervously under her gaze, he sighs at her relentless and incredibly reckless nature. He quickly covers his mouth in sheer embarrassment, completely overwhelmed by her playful teasing. Shanna flashes him a smug, highly satisfied grin, thoroughly enjoying her absolute victory over her flustered guardian. Shanna playfully warns the flustered Lev to keep his thoughts innocent as they bicker back and forth in the corridor. Tied up like a literal mummy, Lev desperately rolls around on the floor in noisy protest of her reckless marriage plans. Completely unbothered, the pink-haired Empress casually leaves the wrapped-up guardian in the hands of a cheerful maid. As the political rumor mill churns, the shadowy silhouettes of the imperial couple fuel intense gossip throughout the palace. Hidden in the dark corners of the imperial court, suspicious, watchful eyes closely monitor her every move. Even while peacefully sipping her afternoon tea, Shauna senses the heavy, distrustful glares of her new servants. The court fears she will manipulate the emperor like a puppet on a leash, using her wicked witchcraft to dominate the throne. In reality, she spends her days completely isolated, quietly drinking tea and reading books in her own quarters. Dark conspiracies begin to whisper throughout the shadows, calling for the witch to be burned at the stake. A roaring, terrifying fire symbolizes the dangerous burning hatred of the imperial faction plotting her downfall. Back in her chambers, her quiet maids silently prepare her for the upcoming night, their expressions completely hidden. Frustrated by the high-stakes political danger, Shauna internally panics over this brutal real-life survival game. She directs her silent rage at the original soul, Ishana, whose past magic has trapped her in this nightmare. Clenching her fist in sheer determination, the pink-haired empress refuses to sit back and be a helpless victim. A loud crash echoes through the room as she accidentally shatters a luxurious flower vase in her intense frustration. Her maids shriek in absolute terror, scrambling to clean up the pieces and appease their seemingly furious ruler. Resolving to take absolute control of her fate, Shauna decides to abandon all caution and approach the emperor directly. She psychs herself up for a bold seduction plot, hilariously ignoring her own complete lack of dating experience. Her grand illusions are instantly shattered when a panicked maid announces the emperor is already waiting in her chambers. Shifting to the quiet night, the luxurious pink-hued bedchamber stands in tense moonlit silence. Standing in the center of the vast room, the pink-haired empress hesitates in her flowing white nightgown. She slowly approaches the grand, heavily draped imperial bed, preparing herself for the ultimate confrontation. Boldly parting the heavy crimson curtains, Shauna announces she is ready to have a serious world-altering discussion. Instead of an intimidating ruler, she is met with the peaceful sight of Emperor Ludwig fast asleep in a white robe. The powerful emperor rests completely undisturbed, his dark hair falling softly over his serene face. Creeping closer to the sleeping ruler, Shauna prepares to sit down on the edge of the massive bed. She quietly settles onto the mattress, keeping her eyes fixed on his defenseless form. A gentle, playful smile crosses her lips as she gazes down at her supposedly terrifying political partner. Leaning in close, she quietly admires his strikingly handsome sleeping face, completely disarmed by his peacefulness. Deciding to let him sleep, she reaches to close the heavy curtains, keeping their secret meeting strictly private. Just as she pulls the drape shut, Ludwig's sharp blue eye suddenly snaps open in the dark, catching her completely off guard.